those of you, I think I know most of you anyway, for those of you who I don't know, my name is Bradley Field. I'm the Zone Sales Manager for the 11th State Region out of Denver. So we want to thank you for taking the time to join us today. This is in my personal opinion, a very important session for you to be in. Some of you have had a chance to meet our analyst, Samantha, who unfortunately due to illness is not able to be here. As a manager, she's my first real experience to working with somebody Gen Y. And that's not a bad thing, okay? Samantha's a wonderful addition to our team. I can't honestly think of a better fit for the role that we have than Samantha. But having been with Honda in 18 years, she was the first person I ever interviewed. Actually, I interviewed her 3 times. She never once asked me about salary. It was all about the job. It was all about other things that were more important to her. And that happened, the interview process and the hiring process for Samantha happened about 30 or 45 days before I had the opportunity to sit in a session with Mark Rikus and Dr. Lipton. And they explained to me about Gen Y and how, as a manager, I'm going to need to change the way I operate. I've got a great team, make no mistake about it. I'm thrilled with the team I have. But my skill set as a manager is going to need to change as we begin to hire more Gen Y people into our team. Along with that, we also have the difference of having Gen Y as a customer as well. So things are changing, and if we're not prepared for it, we're going to be in a very bad position. So if you please give them your undivided attention. I'll put a plug in, because I don't think Dr. Lipton will, but Dr. Lipton actually co-authored a book. Perhaps she'll talk about it a little bit. I actually bought it. It was probably August or September when we had the presentation on torrents. And I'm about halfway through it. It's helping me an awful lot. So if you please give them your undivided attention, thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Bradley. Good morning, everyone. I'm Mark Rikus, and my presenting partner, Dr. Nicole Lipkin. We're thrilled to be with you and to share information about Gen Y. Just to help you a little bit, Gen Y was born from 1980 to 1998. And Nicole will talk much more about it, but they're about the same size as the baby boomers. So you can imagine they're a force to be reckoned with. And when you think about it, they are changing the world. They've overthrown governments around the world. They helped President Obama get elected a couple of times. There's companies called Instagram, Pinterest, that many of us don't know exactly what they do, yet they're worth $500 million as social media companies. And of course, you've got Facebook, that is the biggest player out there. And then you've got Honda designing and building vehicles for this generation and doing much more marketing in social media. So it's really, really, really different. And this is not like a traditional training session. So we're not here to say, here's one skill or 2 skills that you can take back to work and apply tomorrow. This is much more strategic. This is much more information that will help you ideally get a competitive advantage. As we go through, I'm going to point out a number of what we believe to be competitive advantages for you that hopefully your primary competitors, the Toyotas, Nissans, and et cetera of the world, are going to be slow to grasp. But that's going to mean a lot of change. So a little bit about myself. I'm a former dealer, which is always good. I started the Rikus Group in the mid-90s. We've done a lot of different things. We are sales training, especially in limited negotiation or a one-price type process. Obviously, a lot of Gen Y related training. We do work at Honda behind the scenes and some developmental work on Honda training. I also was a partner in a company called PhoenixAuto, which we sold to Auto Trader a number of years ago, but that gave me a good used car background. I was the founding partner of a company located here in Phoenix called Digital Airstrike. And Digital Airstrike is the largest social media and reputation management company in the auto space. So pretty well grounded, if you will, in a lot of social media. Green Dealer Support is a company. We help dealers become more energy efficient. And I also have a company called Send Me a Friend. It's a fully automated customer referral program. So that helps me get around a bit. Just to give you an overview before I introduce Nicole of what we're going to talk about, I'm going to share with you after Nicole introduces herself and goes through some housekeeping, why you should care, why it's important about Gen Y. then she's going to take about a half hour or so, and I think you'll find it really interesting to explain why they are the way they are. We're on a road show here, and this is our 11th city of the tour, and every time she talks about this, because you're either managing Gen Y or you maybe even have raised a Gen Y-er at home, you wonder why are they so different. So she's going to really illuminate why they are the way they are. I'm going to come back, I'm the car guy. So I'm going to come back and give you very specific tips, best practices, ideas of what you may need to do in sales and service to be more effective with Gen Y. We'll take a short break, and at the end of that break, Nicole will finish up and talk much more about how do we retain Gen Y. I will tell you, I'm going to give you sort of the keys to the kingdom near the end of my presentation and share with you about 7 or 8 ways to recruit, specifically recruit this generation. But recruiting is different than hiring. So I will make sure on the sales side, you'll know how to recruit them. The question is, will you be able to make enough changes to be able to retain them for a long period of time and get that competitive advantage? So, Dr. Lipkin?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm a shrink by training, but I do management and leadership development and consulting across industry and across the globe. I'm the CEO of Equilibria Leadership Consulting, so I'm really excited to be talking to you today. And as was mentioned, I wrote a book called Why in the Workplace? Managing the Me First Generation. One of the reasons why I wrote that book was it was really frustrating, first of all, seeing 20-somethings, but also consulting with leaders who were complaining about 20-somethings. And the truth is, we always complain about every generation and say they're going to screw it up for the rest of us. So instead of complaining, I thought it would be helpful to work on a book and to look at this generation to understand the psychology behind the way they act and why they behave the way they do, to apply it to the workplace. And after that, Mark and I started working together, and it's really been a pleasure. So a few housekeeping things before we get started. All of you have participant handouts in front of you, so it's going to go through some of the slides here, but also just some tidbits you can take back with you. Everyone has an evaluation form to fill out at the end. The other thing you're going to see is an action plan. As we go through information about selling to Gen Y and also especially managing Gen Y, which will be the second half, which I'll be talking about, think about things that you can start applying tomorrow to your dealerships. These action plans are going to be sent back to Honda. You'll keep the top form, the rest will be sent over. But really think about things that you can actually apply and make this useful. So I'm going to pass it on to Mark.
Thank you, Nicole, and please feel free to interrupt us with questions or thoughts. And we've had some occasional pretty stimulating debates back and forth with some of the attendees who don't agree with everything we're suggesting, and that's good. That's a good thing. So as you get questions, feel free to raise your hand and interrupt us a little bit. But I'm going to start off with why you should care about Gen Y. Today, 2 out of every 5 auto shoppers are Gen Y. Now, that doesn't mean 2 out of every 5 buyers are, but a lot of Gen Yers, again, born 1980 to 1998, are shopping on behalf of their parents. How many of you have a Gen Y at home born between 1990 and 1998? So we've got darn near half the room, it looks like, has got a Gen Y. And they're really your IT department and purchasing department, aren't they? And when you think about what you have them do around the house, I'm sure they're doing a lot of work there, and in particular, helping you purchase goods and services, or at least doing the research. So they are very impactful. They buy about 20 to 25% of the new Hondas that are sold. And of course, that number is only going to grow. So they are, when you think about it, if they're buying 20 to 25% of your vehicles, think about your showroom floor, especially your successful salespeople. Do you have 20 to 25% of your salespeople selling 12 cars or more who are Gen Y? And you want your showroom floor to reflect and mirror your shopper base, which again, ideally, you're going to have around 50% women and around 20 to 25% Gen Y. And we see, again, that's a big failure point in a lot of dealerships trying to get their showroom floor to look more and more like the shoppers that are walking into the showroom floor. Here's probably one of the first big pieces of information I want to share that might create some action plan issues. Today, 56% of Gen Yers want to buy the car online. So they want to basically get the deal done and do it before they get to the dealership. They're used to buying everything online. So why wouldn't they want to buy cars online? So question, again, is your dealership structured and prepared to basically do the deal, if you will? Now you may still want them to come into the store and sign paperwork or certainly get a trade evaluated, but I'm going to suggest that dealers who now offer the opportunity to basically consummate the deal and often deliver the car to the consumer are going to get this competitive advantage in the marketplace. And this puts a lot of stress and strain on probably your current structure in many of the stores, as most stores are structured to field leads and often phone calls with a BDC. So if you're going to have a BDC fielding leads and phone calls and reward them primarily or exclusively for setting appointments, that's going to be a disconnect with this generation in most cases. Because the BDC, if they're going to be successful, has to answer, if my mom comes in and she's got great credit, what's the best interest rate I can get? Or about what is my trade worth? When does that incentive end? So if the BDC is saying, that's a great question, you need to come in, and we have managers and salespeople that can answer those questions, this is a group that you'll learn more and more about. We'll just click off and go to the next opportunity. A couple of quick war stories just to illuminate this desire to consummate the deal before coming to the store or have the car delivered to them. We've got a client from the Rikus Group. I've got a whole base of dealers that are my clients in Vernon, Texas. You can't find it on the map. About 5,000 people. Ford and Chrysler. They'll deliver 200 to 240 units a month, and 90% they never see the customer. So they have basically got it down to a science of being able to sell cars. And by the way, a third of those cars are used cars. So they are really, really, really successful. And I think you'll see more of that. We've got a dealer group in metropolitan market with 9 dealerships. They've got a website called I'll Take It. PayPal processes a $500 deposit. They can come to the store or they'll go to them. And last month, out of their 9 stores, they sold 250 cars strictly off I'll Take It. So this is going to be a change, I believe, in the marketplace that you need to, at least at a minimum, offer the convenience and the transparency of working with a guest without going eyeball to eyeball with them, which is obviously a big challenge in most dealerships. Over half believe a bad sales experience will cause them never to consider the brand again. So there's a couple implications here. First of all, how they define a great experience and how maybe my generation does is very, very different. Much of their expectations are derived from how they shop today. So think about Apple. How many of you have been in an Apple store? Let me see it here. The vast majority of you have gone to an Apple store where you've interacted possibly with a Genius. Well, when they come to your stores, they're expecting Genius-like experience. They're expecting that the salesperson they'll encounter will enrich their knowledge and elevate their knowledge rather than just confirm information. So when you think about your sales force, and I'm in dealerships when I'm not out doing speaking like this, I'm in dealerships all the time, and I hear all the time, the customer knows more than my salesperson. Well, their expectations based on Apple, and obviously they're spending 10, 20, 30 times more on a vehicle than they are on a Nano or even a computer, their expectations are they're going to encounter geniuses. So short of that, they still might buy the car, but it's unlikely they'll give you a good reputation score. Also, many of them have their experiences colored by Starbucks. I go to a Starbucks somewhere in the world almost every day, and I would submit that I often get a better meet and greet from a $10 an hour barista than I would see in most dealerships. Also, their product knowledge has to be great as they've got multiple drinks that they have to make, and they have to manage traffic flow with efficiency to make sure that the process runs smoothly and quickly. And then another shopping influence is, of course, Amazon. That I buy everything myself from Amazon, they buy so much from Amazon, and they're used to a very rich information resource like Amazon, easy to buy and easy to return. So you're going to see more and more and more of them wondering if they're not happy, can they return your product? Again, a big challenge you're going to find in what their expectations are of a great experience. So Also, those of you who have dealerships, multiple dealerships with the same brand name, that becomes an issue. So if I go to ABC Toyota and I'm caught between a Honda and a Toyota, and I have what I consider as Gen Y not a great experience, then I will probably not go to the Honda store because I'm going to assume they're all run the same way. And it's also challenging for the Honda brand in general. If I, as a Gen Yer, go into a Honda dealership and don't have the experience I'm starting to describe here, I'm going to guess, well, maybe all Honda stores are operated in this fashion. So this whole idea about learning to create a much better experience, higher levels of transparency, much more training, a showroom floor that mirrors the customer base is very challenging, but a very big potential competitive advantage for you. 70% will sway a friend or family member. They have what's called a board of directors, 4 or 5 key friends that they will discuss big purchases with and get their input before they make this big purchase. And then they'll often go to their Facebook followers or likers or other resources of friends to discuss this. Another implication of this is if I'm a Gen Yer and I'm doing, by the way, they do about 9 hours of research when buying a Honda. That's an awful lot of research. So if I'm doing all this research and I reach out to my followers on my Facebook page and I ask, who's got a new Accord? How do you like the way it drives? And I can pull a few people who got Accords and possibly drive my neighbor's Accord or my friend's Accord. When they come to the store, they're pretty much predisposed to buy. So this is not to suggest we shouldn't offer test drives. This is not to suggest that we shouldn't aggressively offer test drives and make them highly experiential and meaningful. But having said that, we're probably going to have to look at more flexibility in our process with this generation because maybe they're just coming in to buy the car. And again, I'm a big process guy. We're going to have to be a little more intuitive and a little more flexible in working with them to find out where they're at in the process, to find out, have they driven the Accord? What do they like about the Accord? How did they get their research done? Where did they do research before we skip a test drive possibly and just go right to let's sell them a car. Current dealership staff in many cases is aging. Again, we've got in a lot of Honda stores, there's a lot of great salespeople that are well north of 40 years old. And those people are wonderful because they bring 10, 15, 20 deals a month to the table virtually like clockwork. But they, in many cases, cannot connect effectively with this new generation of buyer. In a little bit, I'm going to share with you 7 traits that cause a disconnect between Gen X and baby boomers with Gen Y in finding appropriate common ground. So again, competitive advantage is what do I have to do to structure my dealership sales and service staff to get much younger and look more like not only today's customer, but tomorrow's customer for sure is going to be Gen Y dominant. So the whole reason we're here on behalf of Honda is to share with you competitive advantages. I'm going to turn it over to my presenting partner, Dr. Nicole Lipton.
Okay. So it's really interesting because it's the first time in history that we have 4 different generations at work. And the reason why is because people are living longer and choosing to work longer. However, when you think about it, you have to think about 4 different personalities on a team working together. And what happens when you're working with 4 very different personalities on a team? There's going to be some clashes and misunderstanding. And that's how you can kind of think about these 4 generations at work. Now, before I go into this, I want to just put out there, I'm going to be making some extreme generalizations about every generation. However, generalizations are based on grains of truth. So, when we're talking about these 4 generations, the first generation that's at work today that really kind of shape what we know are the traditionalists. They're also called the veterans. So how many of you out there are about 68 years old or older? 1. Okay. How would you describe your generation?
I think you've got it described rather well in there. Respect authority, seek long-term employment.
Yeah, exactly. See,
core values.
yeah. So you have a generation that went to work with the values and beliefs that you respect the hierarchy, you respect your boss, you work hard, you don't talk back, you do what you're told, you come home, you take care of your family, and you rinse and repeat. So that was the veteran or the traditionalist generation. Then came along the boomers. How many of you would consider yourselves boomers? Okay. Only a couple in this room. How would you describe your generation?
The best?
No, wrong generation. How would you describe your generation?
We were brought up to work hard, to respect authority, to do what the job needed to get done.
Exactly.
Long term.
Exactly. That's because your parents taught you that. So very hardworking, respecting authority. But the boomers brought something else to the workplace. The boomers brought workaholism to the workplace. You didn't really have that before. They also brought, I will step on your head and stab you in the back to get up the corporate ladder to the workplace, right? So a real sense of competitiveness, which we didn't have before. And then came along the Xers. How many of you are Xers? Okay, where Mark was mistaken, we are clearly the best generation. But the Xers, we are probably the most shafted generation and the most annoyed and irritated generation. And the reason why is that, again, generalization here, we came home to an empty household. We're called the latchkey kids. Have any of you heard of the latchkey kids? It's literally like turning the latch key yourself. So we were raised by Frogger and Galaga and other Atari games. We had to raise ourselves, so very independent because both parents had to work. And the other thing is we keep living through these recessions. So we were the dot-commers. We are the ones that are supposed to be in leadership positions right now, but the damn boomers won't get out of the way and retire, right? So we keep on getting shafted and we keep on missing our opportunity. The other thing is we're a very teeny generation compared to the boomers and the Ys. The boomers and the Ys are about 80 million. Xers are only 49 million. So everyone keeps on talking about these 20-somethings and ignoring us. So again, really kind of cynical and annoyed. And then come along the Ys. How many of you are Ys? 20-somethings. Okay. How would you describe your generation before everyone else chimes in? Silence. How would you describe your generation? Lazy. Okay. You were texting. No, you didn't hear me. Sorry. Yes, it was good. Entitled, lazy, tech-focused, right? Perhaps a little case of ADHD, focusing on a lot of stuff at once. Okay. Driven. A lot of stuff. We're going to be focusing, obviously, on this generation, but when you have these four very different personalities coming together and working together, what are you going to see in the workplace? Well, you're going to see a lot of intergenerational differences with regard to expectations for communication, with regard to workplace politics, like I'm not going to play the game, versus the people that shaped what we know as business who said, I'm going to play the game, I'm going to be very political. I'm going to respect authority. You're going to see differences with loyalty, what work should be, expectations. You're going to see differences with regard to work ethic. Not necessarily better or worse, just difference. You guys noticing this in your dealerships, some differences? Yep. Okay. These differences and what shaped this generation are so important to understand. And the reason why, again, we're talking about like the psychology and the touchy-feely stuff of a generation. But if you think about your own personal relationships, when you really understand where someone's coming from and why they behave the way they do, you have better relationships, right? Why should that be any different in the workplace? If you really understand where your customers are coming from, why they want certain experiences, or your employees, why they want to be managed certain ways, well, then you're going to be more successful. And that's why this is important. So before we get started talking about what shaped this generation, I want to show you a little video. There is a curse in it. Obviously generalization, but all generalizations stem from the truth.
And welcome to You Can Do Anything, the only show that celebrates the incredibly high self-esteem of the YouTube generation.
Because now, thanks to technology and everyone being huge pussies about everything, it doesn't matter if it's skills or training or years of experience. You can do it.
You can do anything.
So let's welcome our first guest, Lee and Terry.
Hi everyone, Lee
you're a juggler.
No,
But you have juggled before.
never.
Then you can do it.
I juggle! Now when people ask if you're a juggler, you can say yes.
Because I have no shame or self-awareness.
Okay, let's meet our next guest. Liam, you can leave or stay, whichever you'd like.
I'll stay because I'm full of utter confidence.
That's great. Now let's welcome our next guest, Taylor Jones. Taylor, great. Now, tell us about yourself.
I'm what you would call Twitter famous,
Meaning,
not famous.
And I assume your self-esteem reflects that?
No, on the contrary, my self-esteem is through the roof because no one's ever been honest with me about how mediocre I am.
and what if someone were to be honest with you?
I would immediately cry.
And that's accepted now. So, what will you be doing today?
I'll be performing a song I wrote based upon a poem I wrote.
Oh, good. The world needs more singer-songwriters and fewer doctors and engineers. And you can do anything.
A bluebird on a redwood, a green apple on a yellow taxi, orange on a bluebird, black and white on the same color. I've never been punched.
Out of curiosity, how's your relationship with your parents?
Oh, it's great. They're my two best friends, and they always tell me I'm great at everything.
Oh. Is that why you're so sucky and you don't realize it?
Probably, yeah.
Let's welcome our final guest, Brad Lewis. Backstage, you were confused and upset because our producers didn't know who you were.
Oh, correct. You see, I posted a video of myself online, and 1,000 people have watched it. Therefore, I assume everyone knows my name and admires my work.
It's almost as though you consider yourself a star, even though you're shockingly unfamous.
And I'm talented.
Correct. You think you're talented, then you are.
Well, it's like Albert Einstein said. Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% get your name out there.
What are you doing today, Brad?
I will be combining my two life's passions, Irish dancing and Chinese calligraphy.
Which I believe was your double major in college?
No, I majored in poetry and clowning. It cost my parents about $45,000 each.
See, you can do anything.
Hit it! I tried, and there were no one to criticize me.
Let's take a break.
When we return, I'll give out the award for the best guest to all of our guests. Son, you can do anything.
All right, so some truth in this, right? Maybe a little bit extreme. So what caused these generational differences? One of the things that influences and shapes a generation is how they were brought up, how they were raised. So parents, and some of you raised your hands. How many of you have Gen Y kids? Okay, have you raised them a little bit differently than perhaps you were raised? Yes? In what ways have you raised them a little differently?
More communication, more expression.
Yeah.
Let them be who they want to be, but kind of monitor it.
Yeah.
Keep it close.
Exactly. So there's been some differences in the way we raise 20-somethings. One of the big ultimate differences was it was the first time in history that children were seen and they were heard, but they were also tremendously powerful decision makers in the family unit. You know, it wasn't always the way that kids were able to decide what car the family was going to buy or where the family was going to go on a vacation. We had very, very, very powerful 5-year-olds. Fast forward to the workplace or buying cars, what do you see? You see very opinionated, high expectation 20-something-year-olds, right? The other thing that happened is parents told kids that you can be and do anything, like we saw. which is a great thing. You absolutely should give that kind of encouragement to your child and let them know that, yeah, you're really strong, you can be great. The thing is when you blow smoke up someone's metaphorical rear end, without doing it within the context of their strengths, what are you doing? You're taking away reality from them and a realistic measuring stick. The truth is, not everyone can be a doctor or should be a doctor, and not everyone should be the president of the United States. Parents forgot to help their kids understand their strengths within their skill sets and really help build that up. That's why we have all these different professions. So what you have is very, very high expectations when your 20-somethings enter the workforce that I'm going to take over your job next week, even though I've only been in this industry for about a week. Very, very high expectations there. The other thing that happened with this generation, it was the introduction of what we know as helicopter parents. Has anyone here ever heard of a helicopter parent or that expression? What do you know helicopter parents to be?
They hover around their kids all the time, making sure nothing happens.
Yeah, so helicopter parents, for those of you that don't know, they hover around the kids, and any time a mistake or failure happens, they swoop in and save their kids. And again, that great intentions. You, of course, want to protect your child from a mistake or a failure. The problem is when you mess up and you work through it and learn that the world's not going to fall apart and that your life hasn't ended, you develop real self-esteem. You also develop perseverance. However, when mom and dad save you for every mistake and every failure, you don't develop that opportunity to develop that self-esteem, and fast forward to the workplace, you don't have a lot of responsibility and accountability. Now, one of the things that's happening across industry, and as Mark and I have done this tour, really interesting to hear how it's affecting your industry, is mom and dad are showing up for interviews. Mom and dad are calling boss if boss fires their 20-something, or if boss writes a bad performance review. Has anyone had that experience yet? Yes, what's been your experience?
I hired a 22-year-old that hadn't finished college and his mom wanted him to finish school. Found him at Walmart, making way too much money. She drove 150 miles and got face-to-face with me, and I had to give her a written commitment that allowed him to have a schedule to finish his degree.
Wait, she came to you to talk to you about letting her kid finish his college degree?
We finally reached an agreement after an hour and a half that he could continue to work at the dealership.
Wow.
I'd commit to let him finish his degree and help him have a flexible schedule.
How did you look at that 20-something after?
Oh, he's my old buddy. He's sharp. He's good. Matter of fact, he was embarrassed she showed up.
Okay.
Because he had left the nest, but she was a helicopter mother.
Yep. So he forced her back. So he showed some initiative. Now, you raised your hand?
Don't get me wrong.
He is in school. And you raised your hand?
Similar thing is that young person that got counsel written up, and the mother wanted to fight the battle for him.
So you wrote someone up, they didn't perform well, and mom or dad fought the battle for them. And how did you look at that person afterwards?
Being a baby boomer, I kind of resented it at first, but once I got to know him a little bit better, we worked it out.
Right. But it's very interesting because what that does is that you have to put in extra work trying to understand that person and trying to respect them as an adult. Because when you're in your 20s, you're an adult. And it's very hard to look at someone as an adult and trust them with the way you need to trust them when you're dealing with mom and dad. So what this has done in the workplace, which I think is one of the most important things that we need as employees, is it's really decreased responsibility and accountability. The entitlement and the expectations that you're seeing. Part of this is from parenting. One of the other changes that's happening, but actually I will say before I move on to education, one of the other really positive things is 20-somethings are much closer with their parents than many other generations have ever been. The good thing about this is many of the bosses are their parents' age. So if this relationship is treated correctly, there's a lot of influence that managers can have over 20-somethings. There's also a lot of influence that salespeople can have selling to 20-somethings if they really harness that kind of parental relationship in a respectful way. So that is something very different. One of the differences there is you have the boomeranging Ys that kind of go back to live with mom and dad. And mom and dad are okay with that, where the rest of us kind of flew away from home very quickly when we were 18 and said, yay, and I'm never coming back home. Very, very, very big cultural shift. Now, one of the other changes that's happened, which I find fascinating, are shifts in the educational system. When I was writing the book, I had the opportunity to speak with teachers that have been teaching for 25 plus years, so have really seen the changes. And one of the most interesting changes is that in many school districts, they've taken out games or tasks or activities where there are winners and losers.
Yeah, that's
right.
That's a big problem.
Big, big, big problem. Why is it a problem?
Because everybody gets a trophy.
Exactly.
Chip of the challenger, there's no drive to succeed.
Right.
I'm going to get a trophy. It's like the curve. It's like the kid that gets all A's, the kid that gets D's. We're going to take all the A's away and give the kid the D's, A's, so they'll all get the C. Well, why would the kid with the A's continue to excel?
Exactly.
Why they continue to go?
Exactly. It's affecting both ends of the spectrum. So the D kid is really has very false expectations and doesn't understand where they're weak or where they're strong. But your A student is no longer really an A student. They're not special. They don't know that they excel because everyone's an A student and everyone has that gold star. So really doing a disservice to both sides. The winners and losers have even been taken out of after-school activities and sports. I spoke to a mom that brought her son to like a little league soccer thing. She actually withdrew that kid, which was awesome to hear, because there were no goalies on this soccer league. Because that would be winner and loser. That's crazy. No goalies with soccer. So if this is happening all over the place, what that means is that we're rewarding kids for mediocre behavior. One of the most interesting interviews I had, I spoke with this guy who does improv for corporations, but he also owns a karate school for kids. And he's owned this karate school for about 20 years. So parents are his customers. And over the years, parents started complaining, saying, you know what, it's taking my little Johnny way too long to get from, say, green belt to brown belt, whatever it is. Because parents were his clients and he needed to make money, he had to add stripes to the belts. We're talking about karate here, the art of patience and discipline. But he had to add stripes to those belts so people would get there quicker. The other thing is, mom and dad were complaining, my Johnny came in 10th place. Why are you only giving out in these competitions first, second, and third place reward? Why aren't you rewarding all of us? And hello, the 10th place trophy. That's where the invention of this comes. So we're rewarding children for expected behavior, like showing up to class or turning in your homework, and then giving them gold stars for mediocre behavior. Well, fast forward to the workplace, what are you seeing? What are you seeing?
Mediocre work.
Mediocre work, expectations for rewards and recognition when normally that kind of work wouldn't be rewarded. What you're seeing is no lessons from failure or real difficulty taking feedback. A real meltdown taking feedback. Again, I'm making generalizations here, but very, very big differences from what the rest of us experienced as we entered the workplace. Now, technology. This change is influencing all of us. Really fascinating stuff. So, how many of you have Blackberries here? Couple? And how many of you have iPhones or smartphones? Anyone have a flip phone still? That's willing to admit it. Okay. So for those BlackBerry people, you have that red light that beeps when you get a message, right? And for the iPhone and smartphones, do your phones light up or buzz when you have enough emails or whatever? You know what I'm talking about, right? So what happens when your phone lights up, when your iPhone lights up? What do? If it's facing up. You look at it, right? You almost can't control yourself, right? And even if you're in a conversation and you see that light on your screen or that red light beep, your eyes go there. You literally can't control it. Here's why. Here's what's happening to our brains. This is not just Gen Ys. This is our evolution of all of our brains. So when that light goes off, or that screen or your phone vibrates, basically, the message it's sending to your brain is, yay, someone likes you, you have a friend. And your brain gets very, very excited. And it lights up the same part of your brain that's lit up when you eat chocolate, when you have sex, when you smoke cigarettes, when you drink alcohol, when you do other things that we all enjoy, and when you eat an awesome steak. That part of your brain is your reward center, and it's one of the most powerful parts of your brain. Now, that's why you can't control yourself. We can't control ourselves with eating, with smoking, with drinking, with chocolate, with sex, with all of this stuff. You think you're going to be able to control yourself with your technology? No. Because what's happening is it's releasing this very, very powerful neurotransmitter called dopamine. And we are all dopamine addicts. And when that gets released, that's our feel-good drug. And that's why when you're away from your technology for several hours, what happens to you? Besides slight intellectual relief, but what happens to you physically? You get a little uncomfortable, right? That's because your brain is going through the same withdrawal symptoms that it would go through if you quit smoking. It sucks. We are attached and we are addicted. So what does this mean for you? And what does this mean for your 20-somethings? Well, what this means for all of us, especially 20-somethings, because they are digital natives. And digital natives compared to digital immigrants like the rest of us, what that means is that they were raised on technology. Technology is another language. So if you were born learning Spanish in your home and English, you're going to be fluent in Spanish and English. But if you learned Spanish when you were older, you're not going to be that good with Spanish. It's not going to come that as easily to you. Same with technology. So Gen Ys were born with this. They are digital natives. They're very used to it. The way it's affecting them and the way it's affecting all of us is we are having a worldwide decline in emotional intelligence. And I know emotional intelligence, touchy-feely, psychobabble, but bear with me for a second because your field is 100% about emotional intelligence. So here's what emotional intelligence is. Emotional intelligence is about 4 things. 1, self-awareness. That means knowing what's going on inside of yourself. Now, we've all run into people that have no idea their impact on other people, right? And have no self-awareness. You don't want to buy a car from people like that. You don't want to work with people like that. 2, self-management. What that means is if you're really, really, really pissed off or stressed out, you're able to manage yourself enough not to have it leak out everywhere that you make everyone crazy around you. Self-management is kind of important. 3, social awareness. That's understanding group dynamics. That's understanding how people are behaving, how your team's behaving, how your culture's behaving. And 4, relationship management, managing relationships. Aren't you guys in the customer service field, right? Don't you work with people? Emotional intelligence is vital to your industry. And because of our addiction to technology and our inability to pay attention to one another, because emotional intelligence is developed, you can do it through leadership development, management development, but also through one-on-one eye contact, communication, conflict, things like that. That's how you develop it. Because we're all sitting like this over dinner and not paying attention to our significant others, or our friends, or our colleagues, or our peers, we're not developing this. It's declining. Huge, huge, huge problem. So that's one of the impacts, the negative impacts for technology. The other one is that, and I do this all the time, admittedly. Ever say, I'm sorry, I didn't get that text message or I didn't get that email, just because you don't want to deal with that text message or that email? That means that we can log off now when things get really difficult. The thing is, in your industry, you need conflict resolution skills, right? You're dealing with very difficult people. Well, the way to learn conflict resolution and conflict management is to go through conflict. But nowadays, we can just log off like that, and your Gen Ys really can log off like that. They're used to logging off like that. Well, that's really having a huge impact on all of us, because we can't deal with conflict, melting down completely or avoiding it completely. The other thing with this generation specifically is being raised with technology, being digital natives. There's that immediate expectation for information. It's not their fault. It's not bad. just had immediate access to information, where the rest of us had to go to a library and look up the Dewey Decimal System and pull out a book and all of that stuff. They just didn't have to do that. So there's a difference in how they are going to interact. And that leads us into global influences. Now, every generation has had their end of the world feeling. The older boomers were hiding under desks during bomb scares, and they were gathered together and shown 16mm films about what was happening. The Xers have had their end of the world feeling, and the Ys have had their end of the world feeling. Nothing's worse, nothing better. Everyone has thought the zombies were coming and attacking. Here's the difference. So the Ys, during their formative years, when they were kids and teenagers, they were walking through, some of them were walking through metal detectors to get to their elementary schools. Kind of crazy when you think about it. They were watching the Columbine shootings. So this safe place was no longer safe. They watched the planes crash into the World Trade Center. Now, I'm sure if you all think back to your experience with 9/11, we all were vicariously traumatized, right? Watching that image over and over and over again, if you knew people, if you're from the East Coast, pretty traumatic. But many of us in this room were adults. Now, we didn't even have the context. We didn't even have that experience to put it into context. But we did have life experience, so we could talk about it. Imagine being a little kid and not having any life experience or context whatsoever. And here's the difference between being gathered together and shown a 16mm film versus nowadays having the internet. No parent could protect their child from that information. And at the touch of a button, inundated, absolutely inundated with information like the rest of us were. But you fast forward that to the workplace, you have a group of 20-somethings that have no interest in waiting until they're 65 years old to retire and see the world or to live their life. They want it now. And I would say if there's anything that they have this right on, it's here. We are a very sick culture. We're dying young of stress-related illnesses. We eat too much, we drink too much, we do drugs too much. We're just very unhealthy. This generation is saying, I don't want that. I don't want to spend, my entire life is not about work. I'm not a workaholic. I want workplace flexibility. We even have this thing, workplace balance or work-life balance. I don't know what that means. I don't know when work and life got on opposite ends of the spectrum. It's about work-life integration. And Gen Y, 20-somethings are demanding, this is what I want for my life. And you guys have a very big challenge with that, because that is certainly not the way things have always been done, right? You guys have worked extremely long hours, have been extremely consumed with work, not necessarily life. What a challenge you have, and we're going to talk a lot about that today. Last but not least, your social influences. The hippies raised the hipsters, so you have a tremendously socially conscious generation. However, way more powerful than the hippies. And the reason why is because of social media, technology, internet, all of that stuff. Now, they might be more shallow in their interests. When the hippies got together and were interested in a movement, they were consumed by it. Gen Ys, and really the rest of us at this point, are a little bit more shallow in our interests. Has anyone ever heard of Kona? Anyone hear that? No? Okay. You probably will when I explain it. It was this kind of viral video going around. This guy went to Africa. He was trying to get awareness for this crazy mass murdering dictator in Africa. And he put together a 20-something minute video. And it was going viral on, Twitter, on Facebook, all of that. And I watched a couple minutes of it, and I have a lot of Facebook friends, and I pressed like and I sent it around. The truth is, if I were to be honest, I didn't really know what it was about after 3 minutes of watching it, but it seemed like a good thing to believe in and a good cause to spread around. And it had spread around. So it spreads around like wildfire. So that's what I mean. It might be more of a shallow interest these days. But, man, when you have a 20-something that gets on board with something, does that spread around like wildfire? But if you have a 20-something, this is not just 20-something, this is 30-something, I'm in my 30s, this is 40-something, this is 50-something. If you have anyone who doesn't get on board with something, that spreads around like wildfire too. And because of that, this has changed the entire marketing and advertising industry. This generation has changed a complete industry. It's kind of crazy to think about. It used to be if you grew up in a Coca-Cola family, you would drink Coke. If you grew up in a Pepsi family, you would drink Pepsi. Nowadays, people buy products based on the environmental policies of a company, the social policies, the global, the community policies of a company, the experience of a company. That's why companies like Patagonia are so popular. I've never really understood Apple's popularity. Apple's popularity is because of the experience, but they have major civil rights problems in China. Yet people will ignore what they want to ignore, and because of the experience, want that experience. So what does this have to do with your industry and your dealerships? Well, if they have a great experience there, man, are they going to promote that. If they have a bad experience there, man, are they going to promote that too. The other thing is, they're not going to want to work, if they're buying products based on a company's values and beliefs and all of that, they're not going to want to work for a company that they don't share the same values or beliefs, even if they're shallow. That's why things like volunteering or group activities like athletics or green movements in your dealerships, whatever it might be, are so important to get the word out. So are any of you seeing this in your dealerships? Any of these things, yeah? Okay. Any questions or anything you might disagree with? All right, let me pass it along to Mark.
Thank you, Nick. And again, feel free to ask any questions or make comments at any time. We're going to talk, again, the car guy's back, so I'm going to talk much more specifically and granular about the about selling and servicing customers. But I want to start with how they shop. You know, we've spent years now building our websites out and being so proactive and working so hard on our websites. Not that we shouldn't have, but it's changed now. The whole game has changed because they begin their shopping process with reputation management. And I'm going to guess most of us in this room do the same thing. So at one time, having inventory, a great location, those were key drivers to success. Now this generation is so used to buying anything all over the world that they start with, how many stars do you have? And you may be almost across the street from them, but if you're under 4 stars, it's very unlikely that they're going to give you a chance. So this whole issue of being more successful in working and paying attention to your reputation is going to be critical and crucial as you move forward, because really that is the #1 marketing item that they are going to pay attention to. And remember, they're shopping for about 40% of the vehicles. So if you're getting dinged in reputation on certain aspects of the way you sell and or service customers, though that is not to be ignored, or to be ignored only at your peril, because they're not going to go further, again, if you have much less than 4 stars. And there's a lot of dealers that struggle to get over 4-star ratings. The next thing that they're going to do is go to Facebook and see how many followers do you have, how many likers do you have, do you have a fresh Facebook page, you know, how are you communicating, what kind of social activities, community service might you be doing. And 88% of the people that buy a new vehicle today are using Facebook as part of that process. So it's a huge percentage of people that are using, you know, again, it used to be I'm going to go to your website first and then maybe do some shopping. Now, again, the way the process works is reputation. But now, let me look at your Facebook page and see what I can learn, see how comfortable I am with you as an organization. Then I'm going to get into your website. Then I'm going to spend a little time looking at inventory, find out where exactly you're located, wondering if you have policies that might be interesting to me. If I'm a Gen Yer, I want to know, can I return a car? Do you have money back guarantees or exchange programs or any type of long-term warranties that come with the vehicle? Now I'm going to get a map possibly, get much more granular. And then that fourth decision we talked about a little earlier, which is how do I want to buy the car, and will you sell it to me the way I want to buy it? And so therefore, now I'm getting much closer to making my decision, and I want to find out how transparent, how open are you? Might I buy the car the way I want to buy it if that means me not having to come to the store to get the transaction at least started? We're going to go into more about how to sell Gen Y a vehicle. There's a lot of different things that are different. I would almost submit we need two processes. One when we know we've got a 20-something in there that's probably going to buy a car, and then another process maybe for the more traditional purchasers. So the shopping experience is 3 times more important than vehicle design. We talked about their experience before, a little bit where that's shaped, but if it takes me 4 hours to buy the car, I knew what I wanted, I've done this 9 hours of research, and I walk in, and even if I get a great price, it's unlikely I'm going to be highly satisfied with the process. Same thing on service. If I do an online service appointment, and you better have online service scheduling, if I do an online service appointment and I get in at 9:30 based on when I set my appointment, and I'm not seen till 9:45, I'm going to find that to be a substandard sales experience. So they are very, very, very different in how they define that experience, and it's more important to them than virtually anything else. So it's interesting when Brad was talking about hiring that Jen Wire, it was more, she was interviewing you more about the experience, if you will, that rather than, again, the income or the vehicle design, which would be the income in that case. So that's pretty indicative. They don't want to be oversold. They want information sharing. Big red flags go up if they feel they're being pressured or hyped. So when you think about it, maybe we need to start looking at making some changes to our word tracks and our process. Let me give you an example for service, because I don't want to ignore those of you who are out here in fixed operations, and I'm going to share in a little bit more about fixed operations. But how I would share information today, if it were me, a baby boomer, and I had 30,000 miles on my car, I'd drive up to the dealership, and the advisors were looking, and they go, right, because you got 30,000 miles on your car, we have to do a 30K, it's going to cost you X number of dollars, your car will be here so long, and I'd say, fine, let's do it. With Gen Y, you want to say, are you aware of the maintenance that's necessary to keep your warranty in force? No, I'm not. May I share that with you? Sure. Now as a Gen Yer, I can sell that Gen Y anything because I've started by sharing information rather than telling. Most of us in the sales field, and I'm certainly guilty of it a lot myself, it's all about sell, 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 tell, tell, tell. They want a dialogue, if you will, not as much a monologue. So I really need to share information. I want to find out what websites have you been, how much research have you done, what was most valuable to you while shopping for your vehicle. Did you find something that was really helpful? So it's sharing of information rather than telling. Very, very important. Again, big red flags go up if they feel a lack of transparency or being hyped. Lifestyle is very important. So they've been told they're unique, they've been told they're special. Therefore, I would submit that maybe the most important step of the sale is the needs assessment. That is the one where I can sit with my Gen Yer and talk to them about how they're going to use the vehicle, how they might look in the vehicle. Do you use it solely to go to work? Or do you go to Sedona on the weekends? Do you use it to go fishing? What do you do with your vehicle? And isn't that cool? So I want them to feel unique, and they want to talk. There's a reason social media is called social. They like to chat, they like to talk, and they like to be highly social. And it's a group that likes to have a lot of fun. I've got 100 of them employed here in Phoenix in Digital Airstrike, and they really enjoy having a good time, if you will, and being very social. They prefer text messaging to phone calls. We talked about the primary reason Honda has us here is competitive advantages. So, and this is our 11th city of the tour, and we found very little of what I'm going to share with you. How many of you in your service departments ask a customer, how do you want to be followed up if they're leaving the car there? And if they say text messaging, consistently have your advisors use only text messaging to follow up. I'm just curious. That's about, we got one? Yay. Tell me how you do that at work, because share a best practice, if you will, please.
Well, it's listed in your system as best way to follow what they choose. We do have to let them opt in right at that moment. And if that's texting is what they choose, that's the only way that we will respond to that.
That's great. Now, do you have a separate program for texting, or do they use their own personal cell phones?
No, we have a program for it.
Thank you for this. What program are you using?
dealer soccer.
You have some dealer socket offers. And I think many of the CRM tools and DMS tools, if they don't have it already, will have it, because again, you don't want your advisors sending out their personal information. They don't want to send out the personal information, and it's more expensive to text. But this is, again, if you're thinking about an action plan, same thing. How many of you have a BDC in place? Quite a few. You better have texting in the BDC as opposed to other forms of communication. Let me quick show of hands again. How many of you have Gen Wires at home? How many of them will answer the phone if you call? None. None of them do. Because they, even if you're the parent, they don't answer the phone. So if they won't answer the phone when you're the parent, why would you think they might answer the phone if it's a BDC? And in general, they don't use email, they use Facebook instead of email. So back to a competitive advantage, if we're doing our follow-up of an unsold guest to try and get more B-backs back, and we're not using texting, we're not using the number one way of communicating that they would like to be communicated with. So if there's one, hopefully I'll have a number of takeaways from our sessions, but one of the key takeaways is we need to get to text messaging in sales and service as fast as we can. And if the customer leaves, prospect leaves and doesn't buy, certainly let them know. If I need to communicate with you, I tend to prefer texting. How would you like to communicate? Find that out, and your return guest or B-back ratio will be completely different by doing texting rather than our more traditional ways of following up. They want you to take time to build a relationship. As I mentioned, something like a needs assessment or other ways of visiting with them, slowing the process down, and not wasting their time, but being more social, very important to this group.
Okay. Mark, before you go on, I just want to share.
Nicole's got a story
I want to share
that we like to share about this.
Right.
Time.
I want to share a story about just because I'm a customer, I buy cars. I want to share my shopping experience with you guys. So I'm a Honda girl. I have a Honda Civic, and I bought my car in 2007. And this was my experience. So, little background, I went with my boyfriend at the time. And like I said, I live in Philly. A lot of people don't drive in Philly because they ride bikes around because it's an easy city to get around. So he never had a driver's license, rode a bike around. So he came with me wearing shorts, t-shirt. He's a little punky. And I went wearing very nice clothes, all of that, very ready to buy my first new car because I'd used cars before that. I had talked to a dealership before that was kind of close to Philly, about 15, 20 minutes away from Philly. And I wanted to, I actually really enjoy the process of negotiation, so I wanted to check another store. So I went out to the Burbs. And I did need to leave with a car that day because my other car was dead, all that. So I went into the suburban store. 8 hours. I kid you not, it was between 7 and 8 hours. I might be exaggerating with the 8, it might have been 7.5. I had no idea that that's how long it would take to buy a car. I had absolutely no idea. Now our salesman, he must have left me 12, 13 times. He left the desk, he was away from me so much more than he was with me, to the point that I'm admittedly very immature. But he was away so much to the point that I messed up his desk and we crossed out his name on all his business cards and wrote my name in there. I mean, I understand it's totally immature, but we did that because he was away so much. He never looked at me once. He looked at the guy that rides a bicycle around Philadelphia the entire time. Even when we closed the deal, he didn't even look at me in the eyes. I have to admit, and I feel terrible about this to this day, I ended up buying the car there simply out of pure exhaustion. I was back and forth on the phone with the other dealership, and I liked the other dealership better, the other sales guy better. They came out to be the same price. It was just 8 hours of my soul being sucked out of my life. So I just was purely exhausted and bought it. I go to the other place religiously. Now I drive 15, 20 minutes out of my way. I live in Center City, Philadelphia. There's a mechanic right on the same block, cheaper, easier to go to. I drive out of my way to go to the Philly place because I absolutely love my service guy. We're Facebook friends, we hang out, we have a cup of coffee every time he's fixing my car. I really enjoy it, it's like a break for me. I pay more money and go out of my way and waste time going to him because I love him. I obviously will buy another car from this place. I feel guilty about that. But as an outsider and as a customer, here's my dream that I would want my experience to be like purchasing a car if I purchase a car again. I want a team working on me. I don't want to sit, first of all, I never want to spend 8 hours buying a car again, ever. I don't care what has to happen in your business, but as a customer, I want a seamless experience. My experience these days is shaped by Apple. My experience is shaped by Amazon. I expect to just buy a car. I will give you 2 hours at the most, maybe 3. But I also want my expectations managed. I want to know how long it's going to take. You know, treat me like a human. Let me know how long of my life is going to be spent buying a car. But I want a team working on me. First of all, I want someone who knows how to use the car. To this day, and I'm not a car person, to this day I don't really know how my car works because I'm not going to read that manual. But I want someone to talk to me and let me know the ins and outs of how my car works. I want to sit with a service guy or a service woman who's going to explain to me, even though nothing ever happens to the Honda, but who's going to explain to me what kind of investment down the line I'm going to be putting into my car with service. I want that conversation to happen because remember, I'm very loyal to my service guy right now. So that also will capture me. I want a tech person. I want someone to talk to me about what I could buy from my car to kind of pimp it up. I would have spent so much more money than I actually spent if someone sat with me and told me how I could accessorize my car. I travel a lot. I'm in my car a lot. I don't have Bluetooth in my car because no one told me about it. Of course I would have purchased that. Of course. So I want a tech person helping me understand that. A finance person. I want a team working on me. So regardless of how that works out in the background, that's the experience I've come to expect. Like Mark has said, the genius. I want a genius team working with me. So, yeah.
Let me share with you some data points that you might find interesting. The Rikus Group has studied sales cycle time, how time is used in the sales process. We've done over 100 studies, many Honda stores along with other stores. I'm going to ask you a question. I'll pause for a second. And the question is, how many times on average do you think a customer is left alone during the sales process, on average? And again, this is a study we've done at over 100 stores amongst all brands. It's 11 times on average. That includes not only desk trips, that includes maybe getting gas, getting license plates, photocopying a driver's license, getting credit pulled, checking with PDI to see if the car is ready, seeing where we're at in finance. Customers abandoned 11 times in the average sales process. 70% of the time, it takes 4 hours or more to sell a car. 70% of your vehicles are sold in 30% of the time they're open. Let me break that down. In general, it's 2 evenings a week, and that can change by season. Weekends and the last 2 days of the month, you'll sell 70% of your cars. Aside from the customer, which obviously it's not good for the customer, but it's a productivity killer. In an era where we're struggling trying to find good salespeople, you may be running with too many because of the inefficient use of time in the sales process. Because if it takes me 4 hours to sell a car on a Saturday, I'm limiting my best salespeople basically to selling 2 cars. If I drive that time closer to 2 hours, I double the capacity. So again, many of you are struggling to find good salespeople. Many of you have too many salespeople, just an incredibly inefficient use of time in the sales process. I want to talk about limited negotiations a little bit. Here's my recommendation that I would, if I were selling cars, if I had a dealership, I would use a third-party reference as my pricing mechanism. I would use whatever third-party reference is best for your market. It could be Edmunds, True Market Value, it could be KBB, it could be TrueCar. It doesn't have to be below that third-party reference. All it has to be is in the bandwidth of what the consumer expects to pay. Remember, between Gen Y and women, you've got somewhere between 60 to 70% of Honda purchasers. And they do 9 hours of research. So all they want to know is it in the bandwidth of what I expect to pay? And if it is, I will more than likely pay not to negotiate. My belief in stores where we've seen this you actually can get slightly higher grosses by using the third-party reference. I would then leave some negotiation room, and I would have it be a one pencil process or one potential drop. So if you're going to negotiate, pick a number, 200 bucks, 300 bucks, whatever number you choose will be your drop. And I would get one of two ways of allowing that negotiation to happen. I would either empower my salespeople completely to be able to come off of that market-based price, but there would be a severe penalty for coming off that market-based price. I pay them more on a flat fee, and they would lose half of their compensation if, in fact, they come off, if they can't build enough value to what is a good market-based price. Or I'd have salespeople who can't negotiate whatsoever, other than maybe my senior salespeople, and have managers that come and do a one pencil process, if you will. One drop with the customer. They can only drop that certain amount, whatever you predetermine it to be. So you allow negotiations to stay in. The stores that we've seen this taking place tend to get about 80% to the market-based price. And the grosses tend to go up somewhat. So, and you're going to probably attract a better quality salesperson. I'm going to talk about recruiting salespeople in just a moment. But this is something that, again, I think you should consider. You're probably getting sick and tired of hearing the word transparent, but this gets us much closer to a transparent sales model without throwing out the entire sales model. Pure empowerment, again, no wasting of time. It drives them nuts. 11 times they're abandoned in the process. They may get the best deal, but in fact, they're probably not going to give you a good reputation. And by the way, I'm going to bet most of you in the sales side will raise your hands when I ask you this, but how many of you have had an instance where a customer comes in, takes your worksheet, takes a picture of it, and emails it to the salesperson he or she just visited with that last dealership, and literally negotiates their deal off a cell phone, if you will? Yeah, I've seen almost all heads nodding and all hands being raised. It's a new world out there. It's a completely new world that we need to be more flexible and adaptive for this world. Information better be transparent and accurate. Technology, they love anything with the screen. So the faster, I'm going to guess if I were here a year from now or a year and a half from now, we'll have iPad technology in most of the showroom floors, or maybe something that we don't even know of that'll help give us more technological advances. Personalization options. They love accessories. They want to be unique. They want to be special. And I would submit, again, that if an action plan item for those of you on the sales side would be, how do I up my accessory sales? There's a lot, I would predict that finance income is going to be more challenging going forward. I'm going to guess our friends at Honda are not going to build cars with less quality. And the more quality, the less margin and less ratio of service contracts. That's not to say we shouldn't try and sell service contracts, but it's going to be harder in the future. Also, with this administration looks like it's really getting into our business on reserve, and I would suspect before the next 4 years are over, we're going to see flat fees. I don't know if you're reading about that, but they're all over this issue of flat fees. So I think it's going to be harder to maintain the back ends that we have now if we don't shift to accessories, because A, number one, there's a lot of demand for accessories, and B, we need it to supplement our back-end income, which I think is going to be at risk. Green, I love anything green, anything you're doing green, make sure to emphasize that. The good news, and there's a lot of good news about both selling and managing this group, but number one on the good news side is grosses can be higher because they recognize this fair deal. Number two, most will finance. The vast majority are going to get financing, and 74% you need a cosigner, which is usually mom and dad. And that's great to have mom and or dad in the dealership. It just drives you more traffic. Accessorize their cars. Again, you can improve grosses. They love high MPG cars, which is great for you. They're gender and colorblind. They make great employees. And here's my favorite takeaway maybe for you of my little car guy stuff. And that is, you know, when I started selling cars, like most of you who started on the front line, the first thing we were told is go find a friend, a neighbor, a relative, somebody you can sell a car to and jumpstart your career, correct? That's the first thing we were all told. Well, they're coming in more than likely with anywhere from 200 to 1,000 plus followers and likers. They're coming in predisposed to prospect from day one and get their career going. And every time they sell a car, in general, they're going to take a picture of themselves selling that car, post it on the Facebook page, actually get the person they sell the car to be a follower or liker of theirs in most cases. And if I'm one of those followers or likers and I just keep seeing, oh, so-and-so sold a car, so-and-so sold a car, when I need a car, now I know where I need to go. Let me see some Gen Y hands again. Let me see just some, young lady over here in the middle. Do you have a personal Facebook page?
Yes.
About how many followers do you have?
Probably over
350? Then, yeah, that is not uncommon. I've got around 500. I mean, it's not uncommon to find, so if I were hiring her, she'd have 350 prospects to start working. And when you start doing the math of how many are in the market to buy a car fairly soon, this is a huge advantage they bring to the marketplace. Next slide, please. I mentioned earlier that you need Gen Y to sell to Gen Y. And I think this is really, really important. I think, again, that the first rule of selling is find common ground. So I'm going to share with you like 7 traits that in general are different from how I would struggle to sell a Gen Y or being a boomer because they're so different. Number 1 is how they get their information, the technology and how they use it, social media, the music they listen to, the games they play, their view of society, and I hate to sound like an old guy, but I'm not a big fan of piercing and tattoos. I really have a tough time with tongue studs. And if it were me trying to make a sale to somebody who is all tatted out and pierced and have the stuff in their ears and the big circles and all of that, I would really have trouble focusing and relating and connecting with that person, whereas a Gen Y-er will not have that issue whatsoever. So again, if it were my store and I could successfully recruit Gen Y, more women, and then have Gen Xers and boomers, I would try and, for lack of a better word, profile. If I'm getting 20 to 25% of my traffic wires, I want my Gen Y salespeople to work with those folks. I want my women salespeople to work as often as they can with other women with women customers. So the more I can match up people with like characteristics and like interests, the more common ground, the more likely I am to sell a car. Let me talk about women for a second. We've done research from the Rikers Group, and we found that less than 7% of the sales force in the United States is based on women. So there's 4 reasons women don't come into our business in general. Number 1, they don't like the way they're sold a car. Somewhat typical to what Nicole was explaining about being somewhat disrespected in the process. Also, they see negotiations and heavy negotiations more as arguing rather than the pure negotiations that it might be. So they do a lot of homework, just like Gen Yers. They expect, again, to have their educational level enriched, not confirmed. So they don't like the way they're sold a car, unlikely they're going to come sell cars for us. Number 2, when they come into the dealership to work, it's an old boys club. So they're not made to feel welcome early in the process. Even if they're pretty good, they're often driven out. Number 3, and this is really important for managers in any department really, but especially in sales management, is the skill sets are different to manage a woman than they are managing a guy. We're sort of gunslingers, but women tend to talk in stories, and therefore our listening skills, and most desk managers don't have great listening skills, our listening skills have to increase. They want to be patted on the back more than a typical guy. They want better training. They want high levels of accuracy, where again, we're more like gunslingers, guys of my generation. So the manager's skill sets in working with this group and developing this group, being women, need to be at a different level than managing Gen Xers and boomers. And then the 4th reason is hours. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. Any questions? I've got a little bit more. I'm going to go for about another 5-10 minutes, and then I'll give you a short break. Again, if you have any questions as we're rolling through this, please don't hesitate to ask. Internet selling, I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. We know about rapid response and having it customized. Live chat. If you're not doing live chat internally, if you're outsourcing it, you're going to be less successful with this group. They'll know it's being outsourced. So most of us have live chat. I go to a lot of websites during most days, but the more you can do it internally, the better. And it's my belief, again, that, and I know I've got some BDC people here, but you're going to have much more success with dedicated internet salespeople who can take the deal from the lead through selling the car than going through the BDC for the issues I mentioned earlier. Price transparency, again, I know we have a covenant, but when somebody asks for a price, we better give it to them as opposed to setting an MSRP or avoiding the price issue. Product transparency, answer the questions correctly. Email, if you're going to email them, you better have a compelling subject line. There's a whole art and science between getting people's attention. And go look at your emails, again, another good action item. Are they sort of bland? Come on in, we can do better, let me reevaluate your trade. None of that's going to be a call to action that pulls me into the body of an email, such as the incentive is ending, or I think we can work with you to get you maybe a lower insurance if you switch to this car, or I really looked at the payment estimates, and I'd like to review payment estimates with you, including a lease. Something that's compelling that will pull them into the body of the email. Avoid false urgency closes to set appointments. Videos, again, in most dealerships, we're way short on where we need to be in having videos on our websites. And they should be handmade videos. You can have contests in your dealership. You can have your employees do walkarounds and post those. Employees talk about the benefits of working at the dealership, and customers doing testimonials. And it's a YouTube generation, so you should have a lot of videos, but they don't have to be slick videos by any means. They actually shouldn't be slick. Accessories, obviously we talked about that, and that's part of the sales process online. And again, we talked about the BDC sub-optimizing if we don't make some changes. I'm going to do a service, then I'm going to take a break, and after the break, we're going to talk a little bit about how we recruit them and how we retain them. So, number one, online service scheduling that works. Most of you, I would assume, have online service scheduling, but it better be a program that is easy for the customer to use, easy for you to use, and one we honor. Minimize wait time to see advisors. I don't expect that you're going to put a bunch of extra advisors out in the service drive, but having said that, we want to minimize the wait time, and therefore, whether you have salespeople out in the service drive, whether you have seniors, or whether you have, if it were my store, and I was going to have some support in the morning to do damage walks and gather VIN numbers, I would get seniors. I went to Arizona State. I would get women who are seniors at ASU and have them work in the mornings, and then as they get better and understand our dealership more, they might become our next level of employees, either in sales or service. Engaging advisors, again, introducing people to the technician is the best practice. We've talked about information sharing. We've talked about texting, rapid checkout. There's a number of programs out there. Is anybody doing a receipt like Apple does a receipt for a rapid checkout without, if the ticket hasn't changed, without making the customer go through the traditional cashiering process? There's a company called Square, there's PayPal's out there, there's company, Google has now Google Wallet, I believe it's called. There are companies out there that will allow you to do instant receipts based on your invoice that's created. Again, it's better for them, it's more of a wow experience, and it's certainly better for us to speed up the process. And did I mention accessories yet? So this is a great place, again, to go after some accessory sales. It's just about 11 straight up. Why don't we come back at 11:15? And by the way, lunch will be served somewhere around 12:30ish. We'll be doing between 12:30 and 12:45. We'll have lunch. Take 15 minutes, and let's start properly at quarter after. All right, I'm going to start. If we can have your attention, please. I'm going to take you through some recruiting ideas and a little bit on the compensation side. And then Nicole will take us till around close to 12:45 when we'll break for lunch. Let me give you the ad here that absolutely kills. And it's a Craigslist ad. You can run it for free. Looking for customer service representatives. We don't say automotive. And if you ran this ad tonight in Phoenix, over the next couple of days, you'll have 40 to 60 applicants easily, 60 to 70% women, 60 to 70% college graduates. I mean, it absolutely kills. We word it women and men, not men and women, because I want more women, and college preferred. Here's the issue again, and this often is somewhat contentious when we bring it up, but I know this market well. I went to school here. My parents live here, so I'm almost from here a bit, and so I know we're open 6 days a week. I know we're open 12 hours a day, and most markets are pretty tough that way. But if you want a competitive advantage, get more women and more Gen Y, we need to move toward a scheduled 40 to 45 hour work week, where I can show the schedule and say, no, they may work more, and Nicole will talk to you about them being engaged in working more, but if you think we're gonna get more women, then we got 7% on average, more Gen Y that are gonna sell the cars in volume, and schedule them out for 45 to 60 hours, you're just not gonna get the applicants, end of story. So let me give you some tips about how to get to the 40 to 45 hour work week. Number one, we're the only industry that I'm aware of that schedules around coverage rather than traffic flow. So most schedules are 9 to 2, 2 to 9, or something of that manner. What you really want to do is say, what's my traffic like? And that can change by season. If you're a local dealer here in Arizona, it certainly can change by season, by summer versus winter. But on average, it's from 9 till noon. If I average 4 guests coming in the store, I need 2 salespeople. If from 4 to 7 o'clock at night, I get 10 guests, I need 5 salespeople or thereabouts. So you want to schedule as much as you can around traffic. And I know most dealers go, well, what about follow-up calls? And what about training and all these things? I'm going to tell you, it's better to have a better sales force and trust them. And especially Gen Y, if they're engaged, will do a great job of following up night and day, weekends, whether they're on or whether they're off. So I want to schedule more effectively. I want to be more flexible in my scheduling. So I want to make sure they get 1 weekend off. And if they have to switch with somebody because their daughter's in ballet or their son's playing Little League Baseball or something, that flexibility is important. Another thing again is taking the wasted time out of the sales process, just getting much more streamlined in that process. There's almost 2 hours of waste in most of the cars that are sold. So if I catch a guest at 7 o'clock at night, I know I'm going to be there at 10:30 or 11 o'clock. That's typically a couple of hours or thereabouts past closing. Also, depending on where you're located and the type of store, can you open at 10 in the morning and close at 8? And again, probably in July, you probably close at 8 anyway here if it's in Phoenix. But can I shave an hour here or shave an hour there? The other thing that usually sets people off a little bit is the idea of part-time salespeople. Again, I would have delivery specialists, about 70% of your cars are going to be sold during these peak periods of time. I would have seniors from college, there would be women can work evenings, they can work weekends, and I would have them be helping out in deliveries and taking overflow and at least taking the guest to the point where I'll need a manager to come in and serve up the final numbers. But there again, that allows me to get scheduled closer to this 40 to 45 hour work week, and it allows me to start to attract more women to our industry because ideally that's going to be the next generation of salespeople because they know the product going in. We know that if they've got good work ethic, we know we can actually start them up probably at a higher compensation rate possibly because they're walking in with a lot of experience after having been a delivery specialist on a part-time basis. So there are ways to be creative and in particular to be flexible, but we need to get back to this 40 to 45 hour work week schedule or we're just going to shoot ourselves in the foot as far as attracting people with the right stuff. The different benefits you've got, paid training, I'm going to talk about that in a moment, chance to make $40,000 to $50,000. I wouldn't put that number higher because I'm going to guess your salespeople that are selling around 12 units or thereabouts, they're probably making that $40,000 to $50,000 area. That's a good job. Let's go to the next slide, please. Let me talk about, here I'm going to give you about 6 or 7 ways to recruit anybody, but this will recruit Gen Y and women. Virtually all free. Upper right, now hiring on your now hiring on your Facebook page. If you don't have it up there, always be recruiting. Have that up there. LinkedIn is a great way to go. I'm looking for some people right now. I'm going to be testing out LinkedIn, as I always do. If you don't have a video on your website, you can have some fun with it, have a contest, but have a recruiting video up there. Again, ideally, a woman 25 to 30 years old, talking about the benefits of working at your dealership. Again, this costs virtually nothing. E-blast your owner base every quarter. If you like buying a car, you'll love working here. Just put it out there every quarter. Service department, a mirror hanger. Now recruiting, now hiring, use the Craigslist ad. Employee referrals, including Facebook. I would pay $1,000 or thereabouts for an employee referral. The $200 or $250 doesn't work. Pay half of it now, half of it in 6 months. Pay them $1,000. I pay $1,000 for a good employee, and it's your decision whether to hire somebody or not. They don't have to have that skin in the game. And a placard, a cutout of a woman saying now hiring, and I would put that placard in my service department drive. I put it in my customer lounge and on my showroom floor, so we're always recruiting. Next. Also, another thing, I think we're fooling ourselves if we don't have at least $2,500 of training salary. We're not going to get good people. Just end of story. It just, you know, you're lucky to find good people, but you'll get a lot more. And we have modeling on a 30-day and 60-day plan. The cheapest, if you're hiring people with no car experience, which is basically Gen Y, the cheapest thing you can do is pay them for the first 30 days not to talk to your guests, right? The cheapest thing you can do. So I would have a 30-day plan of development and a 30-day plan where they're being mentored, where they are mystery shopping, where they're working in PDI, where they're understanding how you get cars ready more effectively, and again, taking overflow as needed. Then, on my 3rd month of employment, now you've spent $5,000 on them, I would suggest that you put a minimum performance standard of 10 units on a 90-day rolling average or you're fired. End of story. I would force turnover in this case, because you've got a bunch of ways to recruit them, and you've made this investment, and they need to know going in that over that first 90 days of being active on the floor, they've got to sell 30 cars or they're gone. And then I would raise it the next 90 days to 12 and keep it at 12. And one of the reasons we use 12 as the number is the average salesperson is now seeing 40 plus guests a month, 40 plus opportunities. If they can't close me 30%, I don't want them. I want to force the turnover and go out there looking for better people. And I think my last slide is they love the idea of how do I get from point A to point Z. Most of them that you've hired already have come to your office about a week in and said, when can I have your job? So they want to know how to get to point A to point Z. I wouldn't tell you that we've got this mapped out as well as I'd like, but what I really want to do is give them a 3 to 4 year plan of how I'm going to develop them. Ideally, we're going to give title changes based on metrics. So you hit certain levels of sales and CSI, you go from salesperson to master salesperson to senior salesperson to elite salesperson by hitting these different metrics. Then every 4 months, I would have, at the 4th month, I might give them advanced CRM training. At 8 months, I might give them F&I training, not to have them be doing their F&I, but have them be better at affordability counseling. At 12 months, I might give them orphan owners that they can start to follow. At 16 months, I might give them a marketing allowance. At 20 months, I'd have Nicole teach them about emotional intelligence. So there's a way to say to them, in about a 4-year process, if you do things right, you can sort of retire from our showroom floor, manage a book of business, and make somewhere around $60,000 to $80,000. Now, if I'm 25 years old and I say, geez, I'll put 4 years in to hit this number and to have this type of job, you're going to be much more successful bringing in younger people to our business. Before the car guy stops here, is there any questions for me before Nicole jumps in and talks more about how to retain this group? Yes, sir.
Most of these Gen Ys that we hire have no plan to make a career out of this job. And so when we got into business, our whole idea was, hey, we want to move up the ladder. We work ridiculous hours. We better get paid a lot of money. We bought houses really young. We got in debt and had to make a certain amount of money. These kids aren't that way.
Yeah.
They make $2,500 a month. Sometimes that's enough because we're still living with mom at 27 years old.
Nicole's going to address that somewhat, but you're absolutely correct. That's the case. That's one of the reasons I want to sort of force turnover, but also have a career path. if they can begin with end in mind and see, oh, I see how I can do this, either I'll wind up in management or I'll wind up having a book of business, then I'm going to be more likely to be dedicated. But when they get a little bored, they start to look around. I mean, many of us when we were young didn't stay in the first position. But you're right, it's trickier to get them engaged, and Nick's going to talk quite a bit. I'm glad, it's a great question, a great observation, and she's going to talk more about how to address that. Excellent question, observation. Any other questions or observations before we go to the shrink?
Just pass that question off to me, why don't you?
All right, it's coming.
All right, so we're going to be spending the rest of this presentation talking about managing 20-somethings. Just out of curiosity, what are some of the challenges that you all are facing managing 20-somethings? Or how many of you are managing, actually? Okay, how many of you work with 20-somethings? Okay, then it's affecting all of you. So what are some challenges that you're coming across?
Social media is accepted in the workplace and that they should be able to do it when they want.
Okay, so I can Facebook or Twitter
And think it's okay.
24/7, okay? Mm-hmm.
Entitlement.
Entitlement, what do you mean by that?
Why shouldn't I make that kind of money? I was here because I didn't sell enough cars, the same as him. I should.
Okay.
It's a sports thing. I'll never put one of my kids in a sports thing that there's no score.
Right.
That there's not a winner and a loser.
Right. So what he's saying, for those of you that can't hear, is a sense of entitlement. Like, I showed up. I should be making the same amount of money. I don't care if I didn't sell a car. Yeah?
I think a big challenge for our generation is resentment. They get away with so much more than we were able to 15 years ago in the car business. And everything's changed. The way it works has changed. So it's hard not to resent a guy coming in and saying, hey, I want 15 payments on this car, or 10 different cars, right? Because it didn't work that way 10 or 15 years ago. And so to get rid of those feelings of wanting to hold on to the past and not resent these guys for working 40 hours a week, that's a hard thing.
Thank you for saying that. Part of the challenge is all of us and our resentment that we're holding on to and our really kind of stuck in the mud, not wanting to change attitudes in a way. So absolutely, part of the problem is us. What other challenges are you facing?
Work ethic.
What about the work ethic?
Just showing up and actually applying themselves.
Okay. So a difference in work ethic.
Yes.
Yeah. Or a different interpretation of work ethic. Yeah.
We hired a guy to do nothing but take pictures of our cars, post them, and that's it. And it is more than a full-time job. That's all he does.
Yep.
He posts them, he does stickers, does everything, and I said to someone, what are we paying him? $2,500 a month. I said, are you kidding me? And he's happy as can be.
Right. Too high or too low?
$2,500 a month. That's anybody in here. Is that too high or too low?
I'm asking you.
That's a fourth of what I would do that job.
Right. Right. So what you're saying to me is that there might be the money. It's not all about money anymore. It's also about enjoyment of your job. What's interesting is that we think that's just this generation. Isn't that for the rest of us too? Right? It's about meaning and enjoyment in your job. Both? Okay. What other challenges or opportunities? What are some opportunities that you're running across with this generation? That's one of them. If you love the job, you're willing to work for close to nothing. Yes?
Explaining CRM to 20-somethings is a lot nicer. It's easy.
Yes.
Done in 15 minutes. It's over. I don't have to keep going over things again and again. No questions.
Right. So you can explain technology or use technology very easily. You don't have to do lots and lots of training on it. What else? Yeah.
Afraid of change.
Not afraid of change.
Keeping them on task is a lot harder because they'll make 2 phone calls and they play Words with Friends for 15 minutes and then, play on their apps and everything. So keeping them on task is a lot more of a challenge.
Okay, a little ADHD. Anything else?
They know the technology of the cars.
Man, do they know the technology of the cars. Yep.
Setting up Bluetooth for them is, they don't think twice about it.
Absolutely. Again, you don't have to explain it. I get it. It's that digital native thing. Yeah.
challenge with instilling drive.
You have what?
A challenge with instilling drive.
So you have a challenge with motivating and getting people driven for their work. Okay. I'm going to hopefully fix that today. Yes.
They get excited about way different things than we did as far as how you motivate them. We had a guy that was selling about 12, 13 a month.
Yeah.
And he decided he wanted to golf. And I said, hey, I'll buy you some new irons if you sell 20 in a month. Right? Where typically I'd be willing to give a guy 50. You know, I spent $400 on some new irons, and this guy worked harder than he's ever worked in his life.
Yep. So it's amazing the incentive, how they feel incentivized. So different.
We're doing a program currently where, as everyone knows, you don't want to go to the auction and buy a car. You want to take them in on trade. So what we did, it was something simple, was whoever takes the most, top 3 guys that take in the most trades or purchase off the street or whatever, they get an iPad mini. What is it, $300?
Yep.
These guys are calling people, hey, you got any other cars you want to trade in?
Yep.
2-car trades. We did 3 2-car trades this last week.
Yep.
And so, and they're texting each other, hey, I'm going to win the iPad. It's a $300 iPad.
Yep. The two of you are talking about something that a lot of people haven't caught on to. Where money and rewards and bonuses, where the dollar might have motivated you, it's not going to be the same. Now, what's the most important thing that you can do, and I'm going to get very in depth with this later, is figure out what incentivizes you, and not just applying the same shoe size to every single person you're working with. What you found was, man, I love to golf. Great, let me incentivize you through golf. Let me incentivize you through an iPad mini that costs you nothing. But man, does that produce a whole lot of work. Any other challenges or opportunities you're facing? All right.
As Nicole's flipping that slide, where is the sign-up sheet at right now?
I have.
Okay. Would you make sure that it gets passed around to all the tables so we can, we don't want anybody to leave that hasn't had a chance to sign in. So when your table's got it completed, make sure to pass it to the next table, please.
Okay. So, most of us recognize this movie. I want to tell you a story before we start talking about good bosses and bad bosses. So, one of the businesses that I own in Philadelphia is called Equilibria Psychological and Consultation Services. And Equilibria it's a psychology practice. And not for groups, but it's a group psychology practice. I have 13 psychologists and mental health therapists working with me. And the reason why I opened up Equilibria is I think people in my field are absolutely out of their minds. And I didn't want to be forced to work with people who I thought were crazy. So I built a place where I could bring in my friends who were other strengths, things like that, and we could all work together. And it was going to be easy and low-key and laid back because my friends tend to be really kind of laid back and cool. And they were really talented. So opened the doors to Equilibria. And it really took off because we weren't weird doctor types. We were really laid back. So the culture of Equilibria was awesome. The community loved us. Building, growing. So the practice is awesome. Now I was getting busier and busier with leadership and management work and all that, so I was not in Philly a lot. So it was time for me to hire someone to manage this office. And an office manager in a psychology practice is kind of like an office manager in a medical practice. It's medical billing with insurance companies. It's when clients call because they want therapy or couples therapy or therapy for their kid or assessments. You know, it's setting someone up with the right therapist, all of that. So I interviewed and hired this woman called Carrie. And Carrie was 28 years old. When I was interviewing her, I had a really bad gut feeling. But I ignored my gut. She wanted to be a psychologist when she grew up, and when she grew up is the operative word here. But she wanted to be a psychologist. She didn't know anything about office management, but that stuff I can teach. And I love coaching people. So I was like, that's fine. I want to teach you the business of psychology because they don't teach that in grad school. So I brought Carrie in. And Carrie had a big personality. And after the first couple of weeks, really, couple of months, she really was screwing up pretty royally. But I was a really good boss. And I would take her out for a cup of coffee and coach her. I was constantly checking in, kind of talking her through the mistakes and all that, trying to encourage her to problem solve and all this stuff. I was an awesome, awesome boss. And after months and months and months and months and months of screwing up, you're starting to see the pattern here. And also after months and months and months and months of my own personal agony, because remember, I hired her to make my life easier because I was doing all this other work. I literally was working 3 times harder on that practice. I wasn't sleeping. I was going crazy, literally. I mean, it was just, I was working so much harder than I had to, just having her as an employee. Anyway, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars later, in accounting and billing errors. And let me remind you, billing errors in a psychology practice, that's insurance fraud. You can't have billing errors. So I would also spend hours of my life having my soul sucked out from the insurance companies trying to change things around and fix her mistakes. Anyway, after all that, I sat her down after a year employed with me. I said, Carrie, I'd love to give you a raise, but I can't because you keep on messing up and you don't seem to be learning from your mistakes. However, I want to set some goals together, and we'll revisit this conversation in 2 months. So hopefully I can give you a raise. And also, I should say, everyone in the practice, remember that really cool culture? It was just going downhill because I was going crazy and I was really kind of getting pissed off all the time. All my clinicians were too, because Carrie had a very snarky, she had a big personality, but was also a very snarky personality. So she was kind of obnoxious to the clinicians, and we don't tolerate that well. Also, if you're obnoxious to your peers, you're not going to be that nice to clients, right? You're going to be a little snarky when someone's calling and depressed and needs a therapist. Not really the touchy-feeliness you want in a therapy practice. So I sat her down and said, I can't give you the raise, sorry. And she goes to me, quote, Nicole, I totally understand I wasn't expecting a raise. I know I've been messing up. But you need to understand how hard it is to be 28 years old and to have your dad pay for your credit cards, your vacations, and your cell phone. So I made her repeat herself because I really didn't think I heard her right. She couldn't say that. She repeated herself. She said it again. So I took a deep breath. I said, Carrie, you only work 25 hours a week for me. Have you ever thought of either doing a better job to get a raise or getting another part-time job? But Nicole, this is my fun year. To this day, I still have to take a deep breath about that. Anyway, at that moment, I became the world's worst boss on the planet. I mean, I was awful, awful. I was snapping out all over the place. I was talking about her behind her back, and the clinicians, again, we always do that, whatever. I really was bad. And the thing is that I'm a shrink. I develop managers. I work with leaders and executives to make them better. I wrote the book on managing Gen Y. Man, did I go from really good to really bad really, really quickly. Anyway, Carrie comes back a couple of months later and says to me, gives me her 2-week notice and says, I'm going on a month-long vacation, which her daddy was paying for. And when I come back, I'm going to go find a real job. Okay, Carrie, you go find your real job. Anyway, when I look at that situation and how quickly I went from really good to really bad, there were a lot of things in hindsight that I look back on that I realize that were all about me. Had nothing to do with her. Yeah, Carrie was not cut out for that job. Carrie's probably not cut out for a lot of jobs. But the bottom line is it wasn't her fault. It was 100% my fault. It was 100% my fault that I let the culture of my company go downhill. Now, it's all good now. It was 100% my fault that I let that go on for 1.5 years. Really? I literally paid her to torture me. I let that go on for 1.5 years because I got so stuck in my own ways. So before we go into the reasons why we go from really good to really bad, let me ask you, have any of you in this room ever had a really bad boss before? Raise your hand. Any of you sitting next to that really bad boss right now? What are the characteristics of a really bad boss? Yes.
Really bad bosses have no empathy of respecting their employees.
no empathy and no respect for their employees. What else? What are other characteristics of a really bad boss?
Bad communication.
Bad communication skills. What else?
Low expectations.
No or low expectations. Insecure. What?
Inconsistent behavior.
That is always my favorite one. And I kind of relate it to inconsistent parenting. The best way to screw up a child is to hug a child for doing something one day and then punish a child for doing the same thing the next day. The best way to completely de-engage an employee is the same thing. Inconsistent management, absolutely. What else? Favoritism. Keep on looking over there. I mean, I wish I could take a video. Okay. What else? A bad boss doesn't care about you, right? Does not have your back, is inconsistent, doesn't communicate, doesn't set expectations. How do you perform under that bad boss? Bad. You can't perform well under a bad boss. And how many of you have ever had a good boss in this room? And how many of you are engaging in brown nosing? With the good boss, what are the good boss behaviors? Exactly. Complete opposite. They might be hard on you, but man, do you know that person has your back and is going to purposely light a fire under your butt? So you're working hard and you're achieving and you're excelling. And how do you work under that great boss? You excel. The reason why I told my story from good to bad is because I want all of you to be honest when I ask this question. Now, how many of you have ever been that bad boss or that bad direct report or that bad peer? And for the ones that didn't raise their hand, how do you get to be so perfect? Why do you go? For those of you that were willing to admit that you've been kind of bad before, not permanently bad, I'm talking temporarily bad. What are the things that make us go from really great to really bad temporarily? Life. Yeah, life happens. Personal stuff happens, right? And what else? Right. So sometimes you have carries as employees. But here's the thing. Can the carries of the world, the bad employees of the world, should we say that they're the ones that make you go bad? No. That's the thing. No one can make you act like a bad boss. Just like in relationships. Your significant other doesn't drive you crazy or doesn't make you act a certain way. They might do certain things and you might feel a certain way, but you have a choice how you're going to act with it, right? And you have a choice how long you're going to retain that person or keep that person around. So life happens. People are frustrating to work with and how we control our behavior. What else makes us go from good to bad? Yeah. Yep. That's what hurt me. That's what hurt me badly. Because I don't want to admit I made a terrible hire and that, you know what, my coaching didn't work. So there are 3 reasons we go from good to bad. The first one is too busy to win. And I guarantee everyone in this room has fallen into this trap before. Being too busy to win means that you're trying to be great. You are trying to be a good manager. You're trying to be a good direct report. You're trying to be a good peer, owner, whatever you are. But everywhere you turn, you are inundated with so much work and so much to do and so many emails to get back to or text messages to respond to or fires to put out that you literally can't do it, right? Have any of you fallen into that trap before? All of you should be raising your hand. We're all there. Our phones, our iPads, our computers, our emails have not made our lives easier. It's made it harder because we're constantly connected. How many of you return emails at 11, 12 o'clock at night? Yeah. You can't not do it. The thing about our brains, it's pretty amazing. So we have these 5 senses, right? We can smell, we can feel, we can see, we can hear. Which one am I missing?
Touch.
Touch, thank you. And that's feel.
Taste.
Thank you, taste. So we are constantly receiving these signals. In fact, we're receiving way more signals than you're aware of right now, thankfully. Because if our brains didn't filter out some of those signals, we would all be walking around completely out of our minds. Imagine if it didn't filter it out. Because even like the air conditioning in here, the sounds that are in here, in order to concentrate, your brain's filtering it out. And it's kind of like when I think of the too busy to win thing, I think of a shelf. You know, you're piling books on that shelf. Piling books, more books, more books. The 55th book that you put on that shelf, things are starting to sag a little bit, but you're not paying attention to it. All of a sudden, 64th book, snap, shelf breaks. Because you didn't read the directions, you know it only could handle 50 books. That shelf breaks. It's the same with the human body and the human mind. We don't have any perception of when we're becoming inundated and overwhelmed, and then all of a sudden we snap. That's being too busy to win. The other one, which some of you keep on talking about, is really being too proud to see. Being too proud to see is that stuck in the mud or stick in the mud syndrome. I told you guys that I work across industry and across the globe. And I'm not saying this in an insulting way at all. However, the auto industry, along with the security industry, is by far the slowest to evolve. By far. Why do you think you guys are having such trouble changing and moving or evolving? What do you think's getting in the way? Tradition. Yep. And what? Ourselves, yep. And I don't want you guys to feel bad. You're not alone. In fact, some of the biggest corporations that biggest brand names that we know of have the same problem. For example, Kodak. You all know Kodak. Kodak actually came up with the first digital camera in the 1970s. But Sony was the one that released it. Why? Well, because why should we change things? Why should we do that? Where's Kodak now? Bankrupt. You guys remember Blockbuster? It's a big one, right? So Blockbuster was awesome. Great brand recognition. They did things right. They had the money, they had the intelligence, they had the resources. But then along comes Netflix. They were the ones that went with it. What happened to Blockbuster? Bye-bye. Nice and bankrupt. AOL, do we all remember AOL? Same thing. So you all are in a nice boat with a lot of different organizations and brands that you recognize and are familiar with that have been unwilling to change. There's a reason for this. Change is very, very, very difficult. Change triggers, when you're faced with a change, the same part of your brain that is triggered when there is a gun at your head or a bomb goes off behind you. Your brain doesn't know the difference between a gun being held up to your head or having to change a sales process, but it responds the same way. And what that does, when you have a gun up to your head, you freeze or you attack, right? Fight or flight. You're either going to go for it or you're not. So you guys are faced with a very, 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 very big challenge. You have a lot of things about the way things were always done that really work well. You guys made a lot of money, and things worked. Keep those things. But there's a lot of things that don't work now. What are some things that really worked in the past? Tell me. Direct mail? Does that work now? No. So direct mail really worked in the past. What are some other things? And actually, what are some things that worked in the past that you really want to keep? Email blasts. Do email blasts work? Huh? 50-50? So maybe need a little bit of a tweak on the way we've thought of email blasts. What else kind of works that you want to keep? Don't all speak at once here. I'm a little overwhelmed. Huh? TV and video, yep. People want to see humans. People want to see humanity and good stories, absolutely, or funny stories. What doesn't work? Newspaper? Okay. The yellow pages, okay. So advertising that way. What doesn't work about how you run your business? Not being flexible, long hours. Yep. What else? You what?
Straight commission.
Being complacent. Sure. Straight commission. If we were to spend an hour really kind of opening you guys up and allowing this free discussion, I'm sure you would come up with the things that are worth holding on to and the things that are worth changing. The thing is, like I said, it's that gun to the head syndrome. It's really, really hard to change. And it's really, really easy to do things the way they were always done. And here's why. It's something that economists call the sunk bias, sunk cost bias. That's what I did with Carrie. The more time, money, and energy you put into something, the less likely you are to dump it and change. You guys have put a lot of time, money, and energy into the way things have always worked. This is going to be very, very hard. And we're talking about, again, this is behavioral economics. So we're talking about stuff that all of us do. We do it with money. We do it with the way we buy, all of this stuff. You are up against a huge, huge battle of your cognitive biases. The cool thing is what I'm telling you right now is increasing your self-awareness. Now you know it. And you will never not know this, which means you've just evolved. You will never devolve. If you know this, if you know that change is like putting a gun to your head, then you can battle it. If you know that you're going to be less likely to dump a process that you've put, a sales process, that you've put a lot of time, money, and effort into, because that's how your brain works, you're more likely to change it now that you know that. This is all just the way our brain plays tricks on us. Very changeable. But that too proud to see is what holds your industry back. Last one is what you said. Being too afraid to lose. Not wanting to make a mistake. Got some people that have been in this business for years and years and years and will bite your head off if you make a mistake, right? And pretty high standards that you're held to. It's pretty scary when you don't meet them. Especially for a 20-something that really wasn't raised that way to have their head bitten off if they messed up. Destroy them. Absolutely destroy them. So what we're going to talk about today, because it's very hard to talk about management in a training in less than an hour. So what I want to do is I want to talk to you about managing for retention. Because as Mark said, you can find 1 million people to work for you. But then you have to retain them. But retaining them means maybe looking at how things have always been done a little bit differently. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So we know why people leave jobs. There's 5 reasons. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. And if we know the reasons why people leave jobs, then we can start looking at, okay, how to retain them. The first one is this is not the job I signed up for. Has anyone ever interviewed for a job and then started working there and it literally is completely different than what they were hired for? Has that ever happened? And what happens when that happens? You what? You don't stay. You can't stay. It's like a total disillusionment. There's a way to counteract this. You guys have a very, very big uphill battle. You have a reputation as salespeople, right? It's car guys. That car guy reputation is not necessarily the best reputation in the world. The reason why is because there's a lot of, there's YouTube and there's a lot of media and funny things around it. So the rest of the world makes fun of it. It's a hard reputation. However, there is a lot of meaning in your work. You are technically selling the second most expensive thing that people will buy. First is a house, right? Or maybe a boat. Second is a car. That is a very, very important thing for people. And that car gives people freedom to get from A to Z. That's pretty cool. There is a lot of meaning in what you do. You give freedom to people. That's pretty cool. But how many of you think of your jobs that way? How many of you fell into this career versus chose this career? How many fell into it? How many chose it? Why did you choose this career?
Look, people on those cars, and I was 19 years old, and I made a connection.
What a great combination, yeah. Who else chose this career? Yeah, why?
I saw my dad's bake that one time.
Yeah, that can do it. That can do it. And why did you choose this career?
My father was in the industry and thought when he possibly made.
Sure. Any other people? Yeah, why'd you choose it?
Because I was told women couldn't do it.
Love it. Yep. And you can, can't you?
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit, yep. Who else chose this career? Yeah, why?
Negotiation and money.
That you like negotiating and you like making money. Mm-hmm. Anyone else? So there are reasons why people choose this career versus falling into the career. Now, for those of you that fell into this career, what have you found? What meaning have you found from it? That this is what I choose to do. And are you proud of that? Right. Anyone else? For those of you that fell into this career, what about you guys at this table? Did you fall into it or did you choose it? You fell into it. You proud of it? Why? What? You wouldn't do it any other way. You have fun in it, right? Yep. Seems like a very fun career. I'm not in it, but it seems like a very fun career, meeting all of you. The thing is I don't really know if you're selling that to people. And I don't really know if you're helping change that reputation when you're retaining people or hiring people. One of the things I recommend is presenting the good, the bad, and the ugly during interviews. Now, you just all presented to me the good. That's the good of your job. How many of you are responsible for hiring? Raise your hand. Do you talk about that? And do you talk about your own career path in this? Because that's very important, kind of dispelling the myth of why it's bad, is talking about what's good about it. Now, what are the crappy parts of this job?
Government regulations.
Government regulations. All right, one. Long hours. Long hours. What else is crappy about this job? Rejection. And we know that 20-somethings are so great at taking rejection. Yeah, rejection. What else? What about customers? Good and bad, right? People are annoying, right? So yeah, that is hard. That is hard dealing with customers about to spend a lot of money with you. What else is bad about this job? Really ugly. What about the ups and downs with the money? It's not the way it used to be, right? The positive reinforcement that you can get for doing everything right? Yep. Or the negative. Exactly. So these are good and bad. When those of you that are responsible for hiring, how many of you talk about the really good parts of the job and the really bad parts of the job? You do. Everyone's hand should be raised. The truth of the matter is, we spend so much time selling people on jobs, we should be selling people out of jobs. Because if you really tell the truth, if you're really transparent about what is terrible about this job, and lay out the whole truth, then you're actually getting people who want to do it, right? That's a big difference than people who are just saying, oh yeah, sure, I just need a job. See, it's very expensive to lose people. How much would you say it costs to hire someone and then lose them? Huh? 60,000? What's your turnover rates with salespeople? I just hear whispering.
200%.
200%? Would everyone agree? No? What's yours? 25%. You are going to be our good example. What's the difference between you and you? What's happening?
I can't speak for them, but we have in our corporate office, in our training room, it says it's far better to hire someone to train them and have them leave than to not train them and have them stay.
Mm-hmm.
And we just have some very tenured salesmen that stay at our store.
Okay.
In fact, we handed one out yesterday, 14 years selling. Just selling.
Pretty cool.
That's one guy.
Mhm.
Got the same general manager for 20 years.
That's pretty amazing. I think some of this stuff, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, that I'm going to talk about today, your group might be doing. But your 200%, very common. And that is based on doing things the way it's always been done. I'm going to make some suggestions, but I want you guys to challenge me if you don't think it's going to work. Because you know what? It might not. And you don't have to. What I'm saying at the end of the day is take what works from the old and start putting in new stuff. Because as we're all evolving, as your customer's evolving, and we have all these expectations, we're going to go with the stores that are evolving with us. We're going to prefer to shop from those stores. So you don't have to change, but we're going to prefer to shop from the ones who are changing and making that experience different. So presenting the good, the bad, the ugly. Hiring is one of your most important things. And actually, when you're hiring people, what kind of questions do you ask? What are some questions you ask? Huh? What are your hobbies? Okay. What else do you ask?
Do you like people?
Do you like people? What do people say to you?
Of course.
Of course. Right. And what? What motivates you? Ah, selling, I'm sure they say, right? Right.
Facebook account.
Facebook account, right.
What's your circle of influence?
What's your circle of influence? I like that. What do people say to you?
Sometimes they say yes, sometimes they no. If they say no, we don't hire them.
Okay.
What are your expectations of this job?
What are your expectations? On a scale from 1 to 10, or a percentage point, 1 to 100, how frequently do people tell you the truth? On an interview? Interviews are meant to BS the interviewer. No one's truthful in an interview. And no one's truthful on their resume. I am. But no one else is. The thing is that interviews are a chance for people to shine. My favorite question is, tell me a weakness of yours. Well, I'm a perfectionist. And I'm a workaholic. You know, when people give you the non-weaknesses? It's like, okay, thank you. What I like doing when I'm interviewing people, now that I had my big screw up, is I like testing people. One of the things that I can't stand, even though I do it, but I don't want it from other people, I can't stand if people can't sit idly, and interact and have to be on their phone. So one of the things I'll do if I'm interviewing someone, I'll have someone purposely call me, and I'll say, I have to take the call, I'm sorry, it's an emergency. And then I watch to see what they do. Do they have to pick up their cell phone and look at their cell phone, or can they sit patiently for the 2 minutes that I'm on the phone and just calmly wait there for me? You guys, I'm sure, want people that can sit and wait with a customer calmly, right? And not have to be distracted by their cell phones or whatever it might be. So I like testing people. I like pushing people's buttons in an interview. Of course I'm going to do the behavioral interviewing that you're doing, and you should do the behavioral interview that you're doing. But also test people a little bit. The other thing, job shadowing. Many other industries do this, but I've heard more and more from going around that you guys are not doing this. Do you guys know what job shadowing is? What's job shadowing?
Follow somebody around for a day and just kind of see what it is that they do, how their whole day goes.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you do it?
No.
Okay. But you know what it is. So job shadowing is, again, they do this in a lot of other industries. If you're going to go work as a salesperson or a finance person or a service person, you're going to spend some of your own time following that person around. So what's your name? Yeah. Andrew. If I were hiring you as a salesperson, I might say, Andrew, before we do any hiring, we allow people the opportunity to shadow another salesperson to really see what the job's like. If you have the time and the desire, these are some good days to come in. Please do. Before I hire someone, I want them to do that job shadowing. Why not? Follow the salespeople around. Follow the finance person around. Follow the service people around. Because then you're getting a real sense of what this job is. And in other industries, people do that for free from their own time. That's commitment. I want to see someone do that. I don't want just warm bodies. Does anyone do that? Is that something that you are willing to start doing or find worthwhile? Yeah? Is it worthwhile or is it a waste of time? Okay, so could that be something you maybe would put on your action plans for those of you that find it worthwhile? It costs 2 to 3 times someone's annual salary to hire them, to train them, and then to lose them. In sales, $60,000, commission, whatever it might be. That's a lot of money. I don't know who has that extra money lying around. The reason why it costs that much is if you think about it, all the time you're putting into training that person and everyone else around them, their customers, their intellectual capital that they're bringing in, the relationships with peers, don't think it doesn't affect your team and your culture when people leave, no matter how long they've been on. It really does. You're talking about 2 to 3 times someone's annual salary. That's a lot of money. The next thing is onboarding. Has anyone ever heard of the term onboarding? What do you guys know onboarding to be?
Continued training.
Okay. All right, what else is onboarding?
Basically show them how the operation works and showing them what their expectations would be on a daily basis as they go through the process.
And how long does that usually last?
Well, 30 days.
30 days? Okay. Does everyone have an onboarding process here? When someone gets hired, how long do they get their onboarding? Huh? 90 days? Other places? Speak up, guys. What about that table? How long?
60 days.
60 days. Okay. 30 days? And during that process, they're learning the processes, the procedure. Usually, what we've been hearing is something more called orientation. What I recommend is onboarding throughout someone's career. And this is very, very important, and this kind of goes to what we were talking about before. Onboarding throughout someone's career, most dealerships that we've talked to are doing orientation. Now, orientation is that process when you learn about a dealership's mission, their vision, their philosophy. You have like the executive team parade by and you meet who everyone is. You learn the computer system, the sales process. You watch that weird 1970s sexual harassment video and learn that you shouldn't sexually harass people. And what do you walk away with? That image of that 1970s sexual harassment video. That's about it. Onboarding is a completely different thing. It involves onboarding to the company, onboarding to the role, onboarding to the manager, and onboarding to the team. Now, onboarding to the company is that orientation process. Mission, vision, all of that. And if you turn to page 28, I think, in your workbooks, yep, there's an onboarding checklist. Onboarding with the role is absolutely crucial. Onboarding with the role means this is what you need to do to earn your money. This is what you need to do to move up in the ranks. Remember that career path thing we were talking about? This is what's negotiable, and this is what's not negotiable. Because if you lay that out from the very beginning, again, you're getting people that really are interested in this job and your dealership. Now tell me, what's non-negotiable in your dealerships?
Lying.
Lying? Okay. But non-negotiable, I'm talking more about job requirements. What's non-negotiable?
Show up for work.
Scheduling. What do you mean by scheduling?
Well, the shifts, the hours.
And what are the hours?
8 to 5, 1 to 9.
8 to 5, 1 to 9.
Different shifts, that's not negotiable.
Okay.
Work different than somebody else.
And what?
It's not negotiable to pick your own hours.
Okay.
That's the way the store is set up.
Okay. So how many hours do people work?
Schedule or work?
Scheduled. Is that for everyone? Show of hands, is everyone scheduling 40-hour work weeks? Is anyone not scheduling 40-hour work weeks? What are you scheduling?
Day off every other week, so
40 to 48? Anyone scheduling more? Around 50?
46, they can work all they want.
46.
If they need to be there, if they want to achieve and they want to go for it, they can get it. I got guys that put in 7.
Okay.
They're also the ones that make all the money. They make so much money they don't want to be the man.
Okay.
That's why they're the manager, so they'll make the money.
So it's a very important concept here. The 40 to 45 hour work week is very much expected. There's a reason why it came about. The reason why is most of us can't really perform as well after 40 to 45 hours. However, if you have an incredibly engaged person, has anyone ever been really engaged in their job, like really dug what they do and the people they work with? What happens? You completely overperform. You are going to go the extra mile. There is no one, if they love and are engaged with their job, there is no one that I know that doesn't work well beyond the 40, 45 hours. If you are engaged in your job and you feel respected and there's that mutual back and forth, you're going to be answering emails at 11 o'clock at night. You're going to be on the floor well beyond what you're scheduled for. As long as, you know what, if there's an important game of my son's that I want to go see, let me have that day off or let me have that shift off. Respect my life because I'm going to make that up for you. As long as there's that back and forth, you have people that are going to work way beyond what they're scheduled for. Very important. So figure out what's negotiable, and I have to tell you, I'm very proud of this Phoenix group because every group we've been to so far has really battled that 40 to 45 hour weeks, which really, it's not a battle. This is the first group we've talked to that hasn't battled this, so I'm very proud of you guys. This is awesome. So onboarding with the role, onboarding with the manager. Has anyone ever had this discussion with their manager? Or has anyone ever had their manager have this discussion with them? So, what's your name? Yeah. Chris?
I'm sorry.
Therese. Charisse. All right, and using your own words. These are going to be very like touchy-feely words, but Charisse, let's go grab a cup of coffee. So tell me. So tell me, what's working? You've been working for us for, and it doesn't matter how long, because this is a conversation that goes across the career. You've been working for us for 10 years. What's working, what's not? I want your feedback. Blah, 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 blah. At this point in your career, you've been working for us for 10 years, for 2 months, for 25 years. What are your expectations of me as your boss? And Charisse, after this many years, this is what I expect from you in our relationship. And Charisse, what are your goals? And how can I help you get there? Has anyone ever had a conversation like that with their boss? You have. What did that feel like?
Empowering. It felt good. It felt comfortable. It made me want to go work harder.
Yeah. Did that conversation last, or was it a one-timer? A one-timer? Do you wish that conversation had happened more frequently? Yeah. Has anyone else ever had it or done it? You had it? You did it. And what did you see from people that were working with you? Major improvement. This is a 30-minute, 15-minute, how long you want it to be conversation, and it literally costs a cup of coffee. It is the cheapest thing you can do to engage someone. And again, it happens across someone's career, not just with new people. It's just as important to do it with people that have been there for 25 years working for you. It is such a powerful conversation. It should never happen during performance review time if you do performance reviews. The reason why, performance reviews are actually, they're really ineffective often because it's tied in with people's financial livelihood. So when you're talking about people's financial livelihood, you don't mess with that. That's not the best time to have this discussion. This should be happening a couple of times a year. Again, away from the dealership, over a cup of coffee. Very, very, very powerful stuff when it comes to engagement and helping people stay and retain them. The other thing is onboarding with the team. Every team has a different personality. So really allowing people to understand what are the strengths, weaknesses of the team. How does this team communicate? How does this team want to be rewarded? How does this team deal with failure? Helping people understand that process and the people they're going to be working with. When you think about it, people have a really hard time leaving jobs where they really like the people they're working with. If you onboard appropriately with a team, you're going to make it much harder for really good people to leave. So I know this sounds like, oh, a lot of work to do when, you know, there's that revolving door, but this is to get rid of that revolving door and to build that concrete wall where people don't want to leave. Very, very big difference. What I'm talking about here is engagement. Engagement is one of those very touchy-feely, weird words that's very elusive and hard to describe, but you absolutely know if you have it. Many of you talked about already being engaged in a job before. If you've ever been disengaged in a job, anyone ever have that experience? It's terrible. You can't work. You can't do what you want to do. Now, you don't have to believe me, but you can believe the Gallup organization. The Gallup organization is one of the largest research organizations. They did a very, very powerful study. They've done many. One of them involved interviewing over 17 million people, which is a sample size you can believe. And what they found is that when you have engaged employees, companies that have engaged employees have increased productivity, increased performance, increased loyalty, decreased turnover, increased workplace safety, and increased money, an increased bottom line. You will make more money if you have engaged employees, period. That's 17 million people saying that, not just me saying that. The research is very hardcore. Other big research firms have done it, have come up with very, very similar results. When you have, even the companies that are publicly traded, the companies with high engagement that are publicly traded find that they have 3.5 times more earnings per share than companies that do not have engaged employees. I mean, the research is pretty incredible on this. So when you're looking at that, when you have an engaged employee, and again, think about your own lives, they are willing to put in 25% on average more discretionary effort than someone who's not. What that means is that when you are engaged, you're willing to work 25% more than what you're being paid to work. That's why I talked about that before. You can absolutely schedule around the 40, 45 hours, but people are going to work well beyond that. Your top salesmen that you mentioned, they're going to work well beyond that because they're engaged. Very, very, very important. So how do you engage people? What do you do? How many of you in this room feel that your dealerships really talk and work on engagement? Raise your hand. You guys do. What do you do?
Well, it's an individual thing, that's for sure. And it's all about the one-on-ones you're having with each employee, just like you said, sit down, find out what their goals are. Because everybody engages differently, everybody's motivated by different things.
Yes.
And if they're not aware of what's important to you, it's not going to be important to them.
Did everyone hear him? What he said is engagement is an individual thing. And that's so true, especially with you guys in this room. You can't just assume that everyone is going to want the same thing as everyone else. Like, for example, if you're coming up with a reward system, you might have an introverted salesperson, which is a very rare thing, but you might have an introverted salesperson who really doesn't want the big parade or whatever, acknowledgement, when they do really well. They might just want an email or a pat on the back. Where you might have someone who's extremely extroverted and wants that parade or whatever it might be. Engagement is an individual thing, finding out what really pushes each person. Who else is engaging? You guys are engaging. You're having discussions about this? What are you doing to engage?
Well, we make sure our managers are engaged, and it kind of just flows from there.
Yeah.
We have engaged managers, and therefore don't have engaged salespeople.
Right. What he said is that they really work on engaging their managers, because when you have very engaged managers, it trickles down. In a few minutes, I'm going to talk to you about how true that is. Engagement has to be a conversation, and it has to be a conversation not for HR. It has to be a conversation for your owners, your general managers, the people that are managing under. It must be a conversation, and it needs to include input from the bottom up, because you're not going to know unless you ask and start having these conversations. So the second reason why people leave jobs is because this is not the boss I signed up for. Jerky bosses. I already talked about the expectation conversation. Again, this is lifelong onboarding. And I actually want to just, on a side note, make a comment about the importance of the lifelong thing. You have an aging population, so you have a lot of people that have been in this business for, I don't know, 20, 30 years, that have so much information in their head that's not being transferred. We have a knowledge transfer problem. And what's really sad about that is your traditionalists, your 60s, your 70-year-olds, whoever it is, that are going to be eventually leaving, are going to be leaving with one of the most important skills that they're not passing on. And that's customer service skills that you cannot learn in a sales training. My grandfather worked on Canal Street as a jeweler for over 70 years. And jewelry business became a family business. So while other kids were watching Saturday morning cartoons, my brother and I, my brother's 6 years older than me, we were at flea markets and antique shows selling jewelry, which sucked. So I sold my first gold necklace when I was 4 years old. And I was able to sell that gold necklace because my grandfather stood by my side and held my hand and literally walked me through the process. And that customer, that woman would come back every year and come visit me. He taught me how to sell. And I could never sit in a classroom and learn what he taught me. He taught me how to build relationships with people. When he died, that funeral home was just jam-packed. And I didn't even know half the people. Half the people were his customers. I mean, customers coming to his funeral. You don't make salespeople like that anymore. So your 55, 60, 70-year-olds really, as they step out of their careers, really might want to pass that information along. That might be their goal. I don't see a lot of mentorship programs going on in dealerships. How many of you have mentorship programs? One? Okay. The mentorship programs are vital because your 20-somethings will listen. As long as there's that mutual respect, even though it doesn't seem like it, they will listen and they do want to learn. They want to soak up this training, this development. There's no better way to get training and development when it comes to sales and customer service than someone who's been doing it for 30 plus years and is awesome at it. That mentorship stuff goes both ways. It helps both parties. I can't stress that enough. So with regard to not the boss I signed up for, catching people doing right over wrong, it's very easy to catch people making mistakes, very easy, especially when we're so busy. The thing is when you're constantly catching people mess up and never catch them doing well, they stop listening to you. Can't help it. And again, just think about your personal relationships. When someone keeps on nagging and nagging and nagging and nagging, you're going to remember the nagging. You're not going to remember the nice thing they did for you, right? Same with your boss. Like if your boss freaks out at you, gets angry, you're going to remember that freak out. You're not going to really remember that they're good. Catching people doing right is that same thing we were talking about with the dopamine. It triggers dopamine. If you give sincere feedback, like, what's your name? Emmanuel. That customer you were dealing with was so difficult. You did an amazing job. I really liked how you kind of de-escalated them. You just really did an awesome job. I'm really proud of you. If that was sincere feedback, what just happened is dopamine released. And when dopamine releases, because we're animals, it creates a learning opportunity. You're more likely to repeat that behavior. But if I keep on coming down at you, it triggers the exact opposite system. And you stop listening and you stop seeing and you stop respecting me. So important, but hard to do because we're so busy.
Please make sure that sign-up sheet, have you guys had a chance to sign up yet? Okay, anybody hasn't? Okay, just move it over there, please.
All right, so this is one of the greatest lost opportunities for managers. It's what I call the downward spiral. Has anyone ever had an employee go downhill? Yeah? What happens when that person's going downhill? What have you noticed? They call out sick, they show up to work late. What else? Yeah, they're messing up, right? And it's kind of a sudden change in behavior. What do you do when someone's going downhill? Yes, thank you. You're like my poster child. Yeah. How many of you get personal? How many of you avoid that? Be honest. You avoid it. Thank you for being honest with me. All right, you do both. I guarantee if everyone in this room was being honest, there would be more hands raising. A lot of us avoid the conversation because, first of all, we don't want to hear it and we don't have time to hear it. But people often go downhill. Why? Because of personal problems at home. If someone's having a personal problem at home, one of the best things for them can be work, especially if someone has their back. And how do you know someone has your back? By going out, taking them for coffee and saying, hey, I've noticed it looks like you're not showing up on time. What's going on? You're looking kind of sad. Just having that human conversation literally can absolutely turn someone around and help them. But having small goals at work, just think about your own lives. Work has often helped.
If the employee feels like you have their back, they'll come to you first.
Exactly. Now, you might be uncomfortable with actually having this conversation because this is not the way business has always been done. By some people, it's always been done, but by a lot of people, it's not. Here's a lost opportunity, and here's why you need to start doing it. Have you ever had a friend that's really negative or down and depressed? Anyone? What do you feel like when you're around that friend? Negative, down, and depressed. Now, have any of you had an upbeat friend, not one of those annoying people, but just a positive, upbeat someone? And how do you feel around that person? You feel good, right? You feel pretty good around that person, right? So I'm going to get a little geeky on you again. Here's why. It's your biology, and you have absolutely no control over it. We have something in our brains called the limbic system. The limbic system is very powerful. It's your emotional center. And you don't have a lot of control over it. And here's what happens. So when you're a baby and you're born and hopefully your mother is smiling down at you, you mimic that smile when mommy's smiling at you. And when mommy frowns at you, you mimic that frown. Now, when you smile, what happens is it triggers a bunch of physiological and hormonal changes in your body that produce the feeling of happiness. And when you frown, the same things triggered that produce the feeling of sadness or anger or whatever it might be. Now, apply that to the workplace. And again, you have no control over it. It just happens. Apply that to the workplace. You have someone who's very negative, spiraling down, having a lot of trouble at work. Shower them with love, because what's happening, if you don't, that is going to spread like a contagious virus around your workplace and in your team. We've all been there, right? And we've all seen it happen. It's a management issue. It's your issue. You can nip that in the bud, often by a very simple human gesture. If you do not, it poisons your culture, period. And what we're talking about here is culture management. So the fourth reason is I can't get what I want from you, but I can get it from your competitors. If you have someone that you don't want to lose, figure out what it's going to take to keep them. I know a lot of this is common sense. Again, this is what you get for an hour. A lot of it is common sense. But we miss this opportunity and say, all right, we get all personal about it and get all upset about it instead of saying, okay, what can we give you? How can we keep you? This perspective shift from no to earn it, remember those negotiables and non-negotiables I was talking about? You got to figure out what really is non-negotiable versus, well, I had to work all these hours, and I had to do this, and I had to miss my son's baseball game, so you're going to do it, you 20-something that's annoying me. How much of it is that versus, you know what, it's time we change a little bit. But it's not about just giving people things. It's about making them earn it. Remember I talked about, the accountability and responsibility. Unfortunately, we do have a little work to do with our 20-somethings. Now, part of it is because they're 20-something. And you know what? When you all were 20-something, you acted some of these ways too. But part of it is the kind of ethos of this generation. And as peers, as managers, as all of that, we're going to all leave a legacy, and we have a choice here. We either ignore all this behavior and say, well, it's not our problem to take care of, or we start taking care of it and helping develop 20-somethings and giving them the skills that they need to develop to take over our legacies. We don't want to see things go to hell in a handbasket, right? We actually want things to keep on working. So it's also about spending time mentoring, developing, teaching the management and leadership skills that they need to have while taking a deep breath. The other thing are the non-financial incentives. Very important conversation here. How many of you provide non-financial incentives to reward people or to motivate people? What do you do?
Talk about the iPad thing.
The iPad thing, yep.
I've done stuff where I talk to each salesman individually and have them write down something that they would want other than money.
Okay, I'm going to repeat that in case anyone didn't hear. What he does is he has each salesperson write down something that they might want other than money.
And then set a goal.
And then set a goal.
We set a goal together.
Mm-hmm.
And then if they achieve that goal, then they get that.
So they co-create a goal, and if they achieve that, they get that. I love it. How many of you are doing that? Do you work for the same company? Different store, but same company, so same ethos. Mm-hmm. Yes?
Acknowledgement.
Acknowledgement. An acknowledgement the way someone wants it?
Yes.
Yes. Absolutely.
I use cross-training as a reward.
Love it.
Putting them in another job so that they can see what they're going to move into as growth.
Perfect. What he said was cross-training. And you can do that with anyone. That's also part of career path development. I kind of call that rotations, allowing people to spend like 10, 15% of their time maybe observing service or being part of a marketing project. What you're doing is it's like kind of a matrix organization. You're giving people the opportunity to learn how the whole thing runs. Man, that's pretty cool. And often, if you have someone who's engaged, they'll go 10, 15% beyond what they're actually working in their own time. They'll come in on their days off, absolutely. What else are you doing? Non-financial incentives. How many of you do athletics? I'll tell you something. One of the things, I'm a CrossFitter, and I like extreme sports, so I do Tough Mudder and things like that. One of the things I did with some of my employees, we did Tough Mudder together. There is nothing, any of you know what that is? Okay. There is nothing like dragging your friends and colleagues through the mud as they can't run anymore, or they're like jumping off into freezing cold water. There is nothing like that doing that together when it comes to team building and bonding. Now, I'm not saying run through the mud together, but what I am saying is doing athletics together, whether it be boot camps, some marathons, doing fundraising for a 5K, the marathon of drinking beer, whatever it might be.
You know, one of the best practices we've seen is health counseling and financial counseling. Again, as we've been rolling around the country here, but having a health counselor come in, take blood pressure, possibly draw blood, talk about diet, as well as financial, that's another big issue that employees really, really appreciate and minimal cost to the dealership.
Mm-hmm. One of the other things I heard, which I loved, was, and technically it is a financial benefit, but for top salespeople or top performers, there's like a $1,000 kind of kitty, and if you win that, you don't get the $1,000, but you go get to pick your vacation that you want. And the dealership books that vacation. And you go on vacation, and you get out, and you go enjoy yourself. Love it. Yes?
We do a thing company-wide. It's a monthly thing turning into a yearly, that turns into a yearly thing where all the employees vote on someone who's making a difference.
Oh, love it.
And it's a company, I mean, it's bigger than I can explain, but someone wins every month. You can win, I mean, somebody could win every month.
Yep.
And the caption is CLC, which is creating lifetime customers, is kind of our deal. And so say someone wins twice, they get their name in the hat twice. So there's 12 names in the hat at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
They have a party. Each store has a party, and a winner from each store goes to Cabo for 5 days. And Sharice went last year, and
Nice,
the company pays for everything.
I love it.
Including a guest.
I love it. I love it. And guys, think about this.
It has nothing to do with money.
Right. It has to do with the experience and recognition. Think about this. If this is not convincing you, listening to what other stores are doing, when you think about your job, do you talk about how much money you make? Or do you talk about, or you think about your favorite job? Or do you talk about kind of the people that you worked with, the perks that you got, the really cool things that your boss did or your peers did, the athletic events you did, the volunteering things you did. That's what people talk about. That's engagement. It's not money. Money is very important. I'm not downplaying it. Money is very motivating up to a certain point. Yes. The volunteering stuff I can't stress enough. And advertising this on your website, because that attracts people. People want to work for companies that look cool. But money is motivating to a certain point. You need, your lifestyle, what you want to work for. After that, it's not a motivating force. It's all this other stuff that we're talking about. In fact, some researchers have found it can be a demotivating force when it comes to creativity. And you do want creativity. You want the most creative people working for you so they can think outside the box about new ways to sell, new ways to service, new things, new technology. It becomes demotivating because when you put a number on someone's performance, that gets psychologically tied in to someone's financial well-being. And when you talk about financial well-being, remember, you freeze up a little bit. You don't want to get creative with that. So these non-financial incentives go much further. This chart, very interesting, was done by Deloitte in 2009. They interviewed a bunch of employees, a bunch of employers, and what they found was this is what retains people. On these kind of charts, you're always going to see the financial stuff up top. There's never going to be a chart you're not going to see that. Because again, when interviewed, that's what comes up first. But look what's 3, strong leadership, really interesting. That means people are saying, I want to work for a culture of strong leaders, okay? And where leadership is valued. And not just leadership up top, leadership from every seat. Leadership from the person cleaning the bathroom to leadership running the dealership. Because that's a leadership culture, and that's what people want. Job advancement and expectations. That's that onboarding I was talking about and those expectation conversations. Support and recognition from managers. Not just what you think, but what people actually want and how they want to be communicated with and how they want to be recognized. Flexible work arrangements, training, leadership development programs. There's all these different things that can incentivize people and make them feel rewarded. Now there's a 5th and final reason why people leave, which is not up here. And that 5th and final reason is you just created an entrepreneur out of me. We have a very entrepreneurial generation. And what's so cool about dealerships and the auto industry in general is that you guys and the real estate industry, I can't think of any other industries that have this opportunity, have a great opportunity when it comes to entrepreneurship. So when you think about real estate, you know how you have Prudential, and then you have a bunch of different real estate groups under the umbrella of Prudential, like the Adicon Group or whatever it might be. What they've done is they've given, under certain guidelines and policies and procedures, the flexibility for these groups to have their own brand, to do the marketing they want, to build their book of business, to be their own, and to have ownership. You guys have the same opportunity. So you have these umbrellas. Why not set in place rules, policies, procedures, all of that people have to follow? Allow people some freedom to create their kind of little business under your umbrella. They're little groups. Remember, as the customer, I don't care what's happening out there. I care what my experience is. Well, these little groups can be those teams I was talking about, where they can brand and market, again, under the big umbrella, and kind of have and deal with their book of business the way they're going to deal with it. Incredible opportunity to retain people, because guess what? When you can be entrepreneurial in your thinking, that means you can own your thinking. And when you have ownership over your process, what do you have? Engagement, retention, and all that good stuff that you want. So, let's go to our action plans. Let me ask you, what are some things that you feel right now that you can start working on before you start writing them? What are some things that you can apply right now? Or not this second, but yes?
I think one of the main things is work on ourselves. If you're not engaged, get engaged. And if you are engaged, stay engaged.
Yep. So if you are engaged, stay engaged or get better engagement. If you're not, get engagement. And one of the things I suggest doing with that is setting up a work group that will involve all different levels, all different ages, and start talking about the engagement issue and actually how to do that within your dealership, within your culture. What are some other things that you can do? Let me guide you to the non-financial incentives. For those of you that are really focused on money with your incentivizing people, what can you do, or what will you do to start incentivizing in a non-financial way? And remember, there was only about 3 or 4 people that said they were non-financially incentivizing. What about you?
Ask your people what motivates them.
Okay. So are you willing to have a 5-minute conversation with each person, or a 2-minute conversation? Yes. Awesome.
I was just going to say, we all work in different stores for a big auto group. We've made this their mission in life is creating lifetime customers. So we have, once a week, we have a group of champions, which is somebody who meets our department that meets and talks about what's going on in the dealership, different things to get people excited, different rewards for this or that, whether it's handing out a candy bar or somebody doing something good.
Yep.
It's the simple things, and it's the people knowing we actually care
Yes.
about them doing these good things. It's made a big difference.
You know what's interesting with what your dealership has done? It's taken the strategy of a very, very large company that we all know. When you think of airlines, what's the best airline you think of? Southwest. Exactly. Unanimous, right? Why? The people. It's fun. They're not weird. They're not greedy, right? Some are. Okay.
The website's real easy to use and the consistency.
Yep. Absolute consistency. Here's why. Actually, before I say, does anyone know why Southwest outperforms?
You have to pay for luggage.
They have to listen to their customers.
They listen. What?
They're very invested
In their employees. Their philosophy, unlike any other company I know, however, companies are changing. Their philosophy, they were the first to have this. Our employees first, our customers second, our shareholders third. It's usually our customers first, right? Or our shareholders first. Our employees are somewhere down there. The thing is, what you're talking about, what your company has realized, if we invest in our employees and we engage our employees, there is no way that we're not going to be able to retain our customers. When you have happy people working for you, customers know the difference. You can totally tell. What other non-financial incentives will you start thinking about for those of you that are not doing this right now, that feel like speaking up? Scheduling. Who said that? Who said that? You did. What are you going to do with your scheduling?
We kind of monitor as we go. We try to be kind of open to it.
Okay.
It's not like anybody's really overworked. It's similar to their store over there. You're welcome to work 40 hours a week, or you can work 70 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
At the minimum, 40. I mean,
Okay.
if you want to make any money and you're in retail, that's why you're here. If it doesn't match up with your picture of things, then this is probably not the place for you.
Okay. So helping people understand the why behind the scheduling, but then also being flexible with the scheduling. Because again, people will do it.
You've got to like people. You evidently want to make some money. You're going to have to invest some time into it. This is kind of a minimum standard.
Yeah.
But the opportunities there to make a lot of money and have a lot of fun.
Sure.
And I think that's the big thing in the car business is these young people coming in who really don't have any clue what goes on in the car dealership. So we can advertise for a salesperson, nobody applies. You can advertise $12 an hour for a product specialist, customer relations, and you've got people with 4 or 5 year degrees coming in applying for jobs.
Sure.
But once they get there, they go, wow, this is a lot of fun.
And that's the key. Wow, this is a lot of fun. It can be very fun, and it can be very high energy.
But car dealerships traditionally are managed by threats and fears.
Yeah.
And you have all these departments, and you have a lot of hostage taking every day.
And you have a lot of what?
Hostage taking.
Yep.
between departments. So it can be difficult in a lot of dealerships, but if you have an open dealership where people can maneuver and get things done without, dealing with all these different managers,
Right.
it's going to make your life miserable.
Well, let's explain with the action plans. Make sure to keep your white copy, and then leave the other two on the table. And you've got evaluations as well, so please complete those. And we'll have lunch in about 10 minutes or so.
But please do fill out the action plans about things you can actually do. And what you're talking about is a culture shift, and that's what we've been talking about today.
Yeah, have a great one. Safe travels over in Boulder, Colorado. My wife wants to go on. She's got a continuing medical education. See you still.
So everyone knows there is lunch served, right? So when you finish your evaluations, the lunchroom is Palm F. So you go out the back door, you turn left, right? It's the last room.
Have a safe trip.
All right. Hey, John Paul. All right.
It was run by a guy named Lou Tice, and he's a psychologist.
Oh, okay.
They're still around. They did stuff back in the early 80s, but it's taking psychology.
Yep.
And why people do just what they think and
Yeah.
how it's good stuff, what's bad stuff.
Right.
It's like, if you ever have a chance to look into it,
I will check into it. Pacific Institute?
Pacific Institute has gone to the Tice.
Okay.
But it's, of course, I think if you've been in the car business for 4 years, you're probably already pretty good at psychology if you made it this far.
Right.
Sorry about that. Luckily, it wasn't your mics. Maybe you can just record in this stuff. That's it. Yeah, that was right now I have it. Are you talking about how I shot it?
This is yours, I'm sure, and I'm sure you would bet.
I know it's not on the You just have to be better.
Like they were using